Naomi, darling, I'm sure you can sell that pile of rust for scrap. Should fetch you enough for a bus ticket back to wherever you came from. The conference room went silent except for Vanessa Ellington Bradford's high-pitched laughter. Everyone at that mahogany table knew what she meant by wherever you came from. They always did. I want to talk to you about something today. Something about justice, karma, and what happens when people mistake your silence for weakness. How are you all doing out there? Whether you're listening to this on your morning commute, folding laundry, or trying to distract yourself from your own family drama, I hope you're somewhere comfortable, because this story gets intense. What's the weather like where you are? I hope it's better than the cold atmosphere in that lawyer's office. My name is Naomi Clark. Well, it was Naomi Clark Ellington for 6 years, but I'm back to Clark now. And this is the story of how I went from being the gold-digging black woman who trapped poor David to the sole controller of a $480 million family trust, while watching the same people who sneered at me beg for mercy. But before I tell you how I got there, before I tell you about that rusted car and what was hidden inside it, let me start from the beginning. Because the best revenge stories don't start with triumph, they start with humiliation. If you're enjoying this already, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about people who underestimated the wrong person. And comment below telling me if you've ever been judged by your in-laws. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Let me start from the beginning. I was 24 years old when I met David Ellington at a business networking event in Philadelphia. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for money. I was looking for investors for my tech startup, a platform connecting small Black-owned businesses with suppliers and customers. I'd bootstrapped it with $15,000 of my own savings, working 3 jobs to keep it afloat. David was 32, handsome in that preppy way that comes from generations of good nutrition and better dental care. He approached me at the refreshment table, and our first conversation was about logistics software, not romance. He seemed genuinely interested in my business model. He asked smart questions. He didn't talk down to me. I believed that night that I'd met someone who saw me as an equal. Someone who valued my mind, my drive, my vision. I believed that love could exist across different worlds if 2 people respected each other enough. I believed that his family would eventually accept me if I just proved myself worthy enough, worked hard enough, smiled through enough subtle insults. I believed that being educated, successful, and dignified would be enough armor against their racism. I was wrong about almost everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. David and I dated for 8 months before he proposed. His father, Richard Ellington, requested a private dinner with me before the engagement was announced. I thought it was a good sign, a chance to connect, to show him I wasn't what his daughter Vanessa had been whispering about. I wore my best dress to that dinner. Navy blue, conservative, expensive but not showy. I practiced talking points about my business, my family background, my education. I wanted him to see that I came from good people, that my parents had worked hard to send me to college, that I had my own accomplishments. Richard Ellington was 73 then, a tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He'd built the Ellington empire from a modest manufacturing business into a multinational conglomerate. People described him as shrewd, calculating, fair but tough. He ordered a $300 bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce and spent the first 20 minutes talking about the restaurant's history. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at me the way you'd examine a car you're considering buying. "My son tells me you have a business," he said. "Yes, sir. A B2B platform for..." "I'm not interested in the details. I'm interested in whether you understand what marriage into this family means." I set down my fork carefully. "I think I do." "I don't believe you do." He took a sip of wine. "David is my youngest child and my favorite, though I'd never admit that in front of Vanessa or Thomas. He's soft-hearted." Idealistic. He sees the best in people, which makes him vulnerable to those who might take advantage. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. I love David for who he is, not what he has. Everyone says that. Usually right before they start spending money that isn't theirs. He dabbed his mouth with his napkin. I've had you investigated, Miss Clark. Thoroughly. I know about your student loans, your mother's medical bills, your father's gambling problem. Heat rushed to my face. My father doesn't have a gambling. He does. Atlantic City, mostly. Small amounts, but consistent. Your mother had stage 3 breast cancer 2 years ago. You're still paying off the treatment costs her insurance didn't cover. You have $87,000 in debt between the medical bills and your business loans. I couldn't speak. The violation of it, the casual way he laid out my family's private struggles like evidence in a trial. I'm not telling you this to shame you, he continued, though his tone suggested otherwise. I'm telling you this so you understand that I know exactly who you are and where you come from. And I'm telling you that if you marry my son, you will sign a prenuptial agreement that ensures you leave this marriage with exactly what you brought to it. Nothing more. I would have signed a prenup anyway, I said quietly. I don't want David's money. Good. Because you won't get it. He signaled the waiter for the check. One more thing, Miss Clark. My daughter Vanessa has concerns about this match. I suggest you develop a thick skin. She can be indelicate when she feels her family is being threatened. That should have been my first warning. The fact that he called Vanessa's racism indelicate instead of unacceptable. The fact that he investigated my family instead of getting to know me. The fact that he saw me as a threat to be neutralized rather than a person his son loved. But I was 24 and in love and convinced that I could prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worthy. So I married David 6 months later. The wedding was beautiful and horrible in equal measure. Vanessa was a bridesmaid because David insisted on family unity, and she smiled in all the photos while whispering comments just loud enough for me to hear. I've never seen a bride sweat through her makeup before. Is that fried chicken on the buffet? How authentic. I wonder if the marriage license comes with a return policy. David's older brother Thomas was kinder but distant, treating me like a foreign exchange student his family was hosting out of obligation. David's mother had passed away years earlier, which meant Vanessa appointed herself the family matriarch at 38, and she took her role seriously. Richard gave a toast at the reception that praised David's adventurous spirit and his willingness to look beyond conventional boundaries. Everyone applauded. I smiled and squeezed David's hand and pretended those words didn't mean what we both knew they meant. My parents were there, looking uncomfortable in their rented formal wear, overwhelmed by the country club venue and the champagne fountain and the guests who asked them what they did with thinly veiled condescension. My mother cried, but I couldn't tell if it was from happiness or worry. Are you sure about this, baby? She'd asked me the night before the wedding. It's not too late to change your mind. I love him, Mama. I know you do. But does his family love you? Because marriage isn't just about two people. It's about two families. And his family. His family will come around. Once they see that I make David happy, once they get to know me, it'll be fine. My mother had looked at me with such sadness. You shouldn't have to prove your worth to anyone, Naomi. You're already worthy. But I didn't listen. I was too busy believing in fairy tales. The first year of marriage was good mostly. David and I lived in our own apartment, not the penthouse condo Vanessa suggested we take in her building, and not the house Richard offered to buy us in his gated community. I wanted us to build our own life, separate from the Ellington shadow. I was still running my business, though it was struggling. The market was more competitive than I'd anticipated, and I was learning that connections mattered more than I'd wanted to believe. David helped where he could, making introductions and offering advice, but he was careful not to overshadow me. He knew I needed to succeed on my own terms. We had Sunday dinners at Richard's estate, which was a sprawling property in the suburbs with more rooms than I'd bothered to count. Vanessa was always there with her husband Bradford, a finance executive who spoke mainly in stock tickers and golf scores. Thomas came when his travel schedule allowed, bringing whatever girlfriend he was currently dating. Those dinners were exercises in endurance. Naomi, dear, you really should try the salmon. I know you people prefer different cuisines, but the chef is quite talented. Vanessa would say things like that, smiling sweetly. Did you see that documentary about African villages? It made me think of you, Naomi. Do you have family there? Thomas's girlfriend of the month would ask, genuinely confused when I explained that my family had been in America for generations. Richard mostly ignored me, directing conversations to David or Vanessa or Thomas. When he did acknowledge me, it was usually to ask pointed questions about my business in a tone that suggested he already knew it was failing. How are your quarterly revenues, Naomi? Still building, Richard. These things take time. Indeed they do. I built my first successful company by the time I was 26. But everyone has their own pace. David would squeeze my hand under the table. Naomi's platform is innovative, Dad. She's playing the long game. The long game requires capital. Does she have investors? I'm bootstrapping, I'd say, lifting my chin. I want to maintain control of my vision. Pride is expensive, Richard would reply, and change the subject. I endured it because I loved David. Because he defended me, even when it put him at odds with his family. Because in our private moments, he told me I was brilliant and beautiful and strong. Because I believed that time would soften their edges, that persistence would win them over. I was still so naive. 2 years into our marriage, my business failed. Not dramatically, just a slow bleeding out of resources until I couldn't justify continuing. I closed it down, paid off what debts I could, and took a job as a project manager at a tech firm. It was good work, well paid, respectable. But it felt like defeat. Vanessa brought it up at the next Sunday dinner. I heard your little venture didn't work out, she said, passing the bread basket. Such a shame. Though I suppose not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship. It requires a certain pedigree. Vanessa, David warned. What? I'm being supportive. I think it's wonderful that Naomi is being realistic about her limitations. There's no shame in being an employee rather than an employer. Most people are much happier when they know their place. Richard said nothing, which was its own form of agreement. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently for 5 minutes, then fixed my makeup and went back to the table with my head high. That's when things started to change with David. He didn't say anything directly, but I felt it. A subtle shift in how he looked at me. A new distance in his tone when discussing our future. He started working later, traveling more for his role in the family business. Our conversations became shallower, focusing on logistics rather than dreams. Are you happy? I asked him one night, 3 years into our marriage. He looked up from his laptop, surprised. Of course. Why? You seem distant. Like you're somewhere else even when you're here. I'm just stressed with work. Dad's talking about succession planning, and Vanessa is making her case for why she should have more control. It's complicated. Am I part of what makes it complicated? Naomi, don't. Don't what? Don't notice that your family still treats me like an intruder? Don't notice that you've stopped defending me when they make their little comments? I'm tired of fighting with them about it. They're not going to change, and you getting upset every time just makes everything harder. So I should just accept it? Just smile while your sister calls me, you people, and your father acts like I'm a parasite. They don't think you're a parasite. Don't they? He closed his laptop with a sigh. My family has certain expectations. Certain ways of doing things. It's not personal. It's completely personal, David. It's about me. About who I am and where I come from, and the fact that I don't fit their idea of who you should have married. Maybe if you tried harder to connect with them. Tried harder. I stood up, my hands shaking. I have tried everything. I've been polite and gracious and professional. I've endured their condescension and their racism and their dismissal. What exactly should I try harder at? Should I change my skin color? My background? Should I erase myself completely to make them comfortable? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? He looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been resentment. I'm saying that I'm caught between you and my family, and I'm exhausted from being in the middle. That's when I understood. David wasn't on my side anymore. Maybe he never had been, not really. He'd loved the idea of me, the successful, independent woman who challenged his world. But when that success faded, when the reality of choosing me meant actual conflict with his family, his love faded too. The divorce papers came 6 months later. He was apologetic about it, almost clinical in his gentleness. We'd grown apart. We wanted different things. It wasn't working. All the phrases people use when they mean, I've stopped loving you but don't want to be the villain. The prenup meant I left with exactly what I'd brought: debt, determination, and a last name I quickly dropped. David kept the apartment, the investment accounts, the future inheritance. I moved into a modest one-bedroom and tried to rebuild my life. Vanessa sent me a gift basket when the divorce was finalized. Expensive chocolates and a card that read, "Congratulations on your freedom. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. You people always do." I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. That the Ellington family wasn't done with me yet. But I had no idea that Richard Ellington had been watching everything unfold. That he'd been testing me, testing David, testing all of us. That he'd been making plans. I had no idea that 6 months after my divorce was finalized, Richard would die of a sudden heart attack. And I had absolutely no idea that I'd be summoned to the reading of his will. The letter came to my apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. Heavy cream-colored paper, the Ellington family crest embossed on the envelope. Inside, a formal request from the law firm of Morrison, Whitfield and Associates, asking me to attend the reading of Richard Ellington's last will and testament. Your presence is required as a named beneficiary. I read it 3 times, certain I'd misunderstood. I hadn't spoken to any of the Ellingtons since the divorce was finalized. David had sent a brief text when his father died, "Dad passed away this morning. Thought you should know." And I'd sent condolences, but that was it. Why would Richard Ellington leave me anything? The man who'd investigated my family, who'd made me sign a prenup, who'd sat silent through countless dinners while his daughter mocked me. I almost didn't go. I almost threw the letter away and tried to forget I'd ever been Naomi Clark Ellington. But curiosity got the better of me. Or maybe it was something else, a need for closure, or a final chance to show them I'd survived their rejection. So I put on my best suit, not expensive, but professional, and showed up to that law firm on the appointed day. The conference room was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a view of the city skyline that reminded everyone in the room who had power and who didn't. Vanessa was already there when I arrived, sitting at the head of the table like she owned the place. Bradford beside her, checking his phone. Thomas across from them, looking uncomfortable in his suit. And David. David sat at the far end, and when I walked in, his eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected me either. What is she doing here? Vanessa's voice could have cut glass. The lawyer, a thin man in his 60s named Mr. Patterson, looked up from his papers. Mrs. Clark was named in Mr. Ellington's will. She has every right to be here. It's Miss Clark, I corrected. It's Miss Clark, I corrected quietly, taking a seat as far from the family as possible. I dropped the Ellington name. Vanessa's laugh was sharp. Of course you did. Can't claim connection to money you're not entitled to anymore, can you? Vanessa, please. Thomas rubbed his temples. Can we just get through this with some dignity? Dad deserves that much. Don't lecture me about what Dad deserves. I'm the one who was here, taking care of everything while you were off in Singapore or wherever your latest business trip took you. She turned her glare on David. And while you were busy divorcing your mistake. David flinched, but said nothing. He wouldn't even look at me. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat with the authority of a man who'd refereed countless family disputes. If we're all settled, I'll begin. Mr. Ellington was very specific about who should be present for this reading, and he was equally specific about the order in which information should be revealed. He opened a leather folder and pulled out several documents. I recognized Richard's letterhead immediately, that heavy bond paper he used for everything, like regular paper wasn't good enough for Ellington correspondence. Richard Ellington was a meticulous man, Mr. Patterson continued. He updated this will 6 times over the past 40 years. The final version was completed 3 months before his death. 3 months. That meant Richard had revised his will 6 months after my divorce from David. Why? The estate is substantial, Mr. Patterson said, putting on his reading glasses. The primary assets include the Ellington Manufacturing Corporation, valued at approximately $340 million, the family estate and associated properties totaling $87 million. Investment portfolios worth $156 million, and various trusts, accounts, and holdings bringing the total estate value to just over $600 million. I heard Vanessa's sharp intake of breath. Even knowing the family was wealthy, hearing the actual number was staggering. The will divides the estate as follows, Mr. Patterson continued. To my son Thomas Ellington, I leave 30% of Ellington Manufacturing Corporation shares, the property in Cape Cod, and a trust fund of $25 million. Thomas nodded slowly. He'd expected something like that. He'd never been particularly interested in running the company, preferring his own consulting career. To my daughter Vanessa Ellington Bradford, I leave 30% of Ellington Manufacturing Corporation shares, the collection of artwork and antiques from the main estate, and a trust fund of $25 million. Vanessa's smile was triumphant. She'd been angling for control of the company for years, and with 60% of the shares between her and Thomas, she probably thought she'd won. To my son David Ellington, I leave the remaining 40% of Ellington Manufacturing Corporation shares, the estate property and all associated holdings, and a trust fund of $30 million. David's face was unreadable. He'd gotten the largest share, the family home, control of the company. Everything Vanessa had wanted. That's not fair. Vanessa was on her feet. I've dedicated my life to this family, to the company, and David gets the controlling share? He barely works there. Dad always favored him, Thomas muttered, but he didn't seem particularly upset. We all knew that. Please sit down, Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Patterson's voice was firm. I'm not finished. Vanessa sat, but her face was flushed with anger. What else could there possibly be? Mr. Patterson looked directly at me for the first time. To Naomi Clark, formerly Naomi Clark Ellington, I leave the 1965 Ford Mustang currently stored in the east garage of the estate property. The room went silent. Then Vanessa started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-throated laugh that echoed off the wood paneling. The Mustang? The rusted piece of junk that's been rotting in the garage for 30 years? That's what he left her. Bradford joined in, a low chuckle. Even Thomas cracked a smile. I sat perfectly still, my face hot with humiliation. I'd come here expecting nothing, and somehow getting something made it worse. A rusted car. A piece of junk. A final insult from a man who'd never respected me. Oh, this is perfect, Vanessa gasped between laughs. This is absolutely perfect. Naomi, darling, I'm sure you can sell that pile of rust for scrap. Should fetch you enough for a bus ticket back to wherever you came from. Vanessa, that's enough. David's voice was quiet but strained. Is it? Is it really enough? Because I think Dad had a wonderful sense of humor about this. He left the gold digger exactly what she deserves, scrap metal. She wiped tears from her eyes. You should see this car, Naomi. It's been sitting in the garage since before you were born, probably. Covered in rust, tires flat, engine seized. It's literally worthless. But hey, at least you got something, right? I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out of that conference room and never think about the Ellington family again. But something kept me in my chair. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the strange feeling that there was more to this. Mr. Patterson hadn't joined in the laughter. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Are we done? I asked quietly. Can I sign whatever I need to sign and leave? Not quite. Mr. Patterson picked up another document. There's a codicil to the will. A final clause that Mr. Ellington insisted be read only after the initial bequests were announced. The laughter died down. Vanessa leaned forward. What kind of codicil? Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and began to read in a measured tone. I, Richard Ellington, being of sound mind and body at the time of this writing, do hereby add the following conditions and clarifications to my last will and testament. This codicil supersedes any previous arrangements and cannot be contested or altered. He paused, and the room seemed to hold its breath. First, regarding the 1965 Ford Mustang left to Naomi Clark, this vehicle is to be delivered to Ms. Clark immediately upon reading of this will, and she is to be given full and unfettered access to the vehicle and all items contained within it. The vehicle is not to be touched, moved, or examined by any other beneficiary prior to Ms. Clark taking possession. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Yes, she gets the junk car. We understand. Second, Mr. Patterson continued, his voice growing firmer, Ms. Clark is to be informed that the Mustang contains items of significant importance to the Ellington estate. Specifically, hidden within the vehicle's frame are the original ownership documents for the Ellington Family Trust, established in 1952. The room went very, very quiet. The Ellington Family Trust, Mr. Patterson read on, currently valued at approximately $480 million, has been maintained separately from the Ellington Manufacturing Corporation. Control of this trust has been deliberately obscured for the past 70 years for reasons that will become clear to the executor. I couldn't breathe. For $180 million? The trust documents hidden in the Mustang, Mr. Patterson continued, name the rightful controller of the trust assets. These documents supersede any claims made by current family members and, according to the terms established in 1952, cannot be dissolved or contested by any party. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. What are you saying? Mr. Patterson looked up from the document, and for the first time, I saw something like satisfaction in his eyes. I'm saying that according to the original trust documents that Mr. Ellington has now chosen to reveal, control of the Ellington Family Trust, all $480 million of it, belongs solely and completely to whoever possesses the original trust documents and the key hidden with them. That's insane, Bradford sputtered. You can't just hide ownership documents in a car. Mr. Ellington could and did. Mr. Patterson turned to me. Miss Clark, your inheritance isn't a rusted car. It's access to the truth about the Ellington fortune. And according to the terms Mr. Ellington has outlined, once you take possession of those documents, the trust is yours to control. I couldn't process what I was hearing. It didn't make sense. Why would Richard Ellington leave me access to $480 million? He'd hated me. He'd investigated my family, forced me to sign a prenup, sat silent while his daughter tormented me. There has to be a mistake. David's voice cracked. Dad wouldn't. He couldn't. There's no mistake. Mr. Patterson pulled out another sheet of paper. Mr. Ellington left a letter explaining his reasoning. He requested it be read aloud at this time. Don't you dare, Vanessa hissed. But Mr. Patterson was already reading. To my children and to Naomi, by the time you hear this, I'll be gone, and I suspect the reading of my will has been quite the spectacle. Vanessa is probably furious. Thomas is probably confused. David is probably feeling guilty. And Naomi is probably wondering why she came at all. The accuracy of it was unsettling. Even from the grave, Richard Ellington could read people perfectly. I've spent my life building an empire, but empires are only as strong as the people who inherit them. I needed to know who among you had the character to deserve what I built. So I tested you. All of you. My hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the table. Vanessa, you are brilliant and driven, but you are cruel. You measure people's worth by their bank accounts and their skin color. You would use the family fortune to build walls instead of bridges, to elevate yourself by diminishing others. You are your mother's daughter in all the worst ways. I glanced at Vanessa. Her face had gone white. Thomas, you're kind but weak. You've spent your life running from responsibility, preferring to let others make difficult decisions while you reap the benefits. You would squander the fortune through neglect, not malice. Thomas stared at the table, his jaw tight. David, my favorite son, you are compassionate but spineless. You choose comfort over courage every time. When you married Naomi, I hoped it meant you'd finally found your backbone. When you divorced her because standing up to your family became inconvenient, I knew I'd been wrong about you. David's face crumbled. I should have felt vindicated, but I only felt sad. Naomi Clark came into this family with nothing but her own merit. She endured Vanessa's cruelty with dignity. She worked hard to build her own success instead of living off my son's money. And when her business failed, she picked herself up and found another way forward. She asked for nothing, expected nothing. And when my spineless son divorced her, she left with her head high. My eyes were burning with tears I refused to let fall. I investigated Naomi before she married David, yes. But I continued investigating her afterward. I watched how she handled Vanessa's racism. How she supported David even when he didn't deserve it. How she held on to her integrity when it would have been easier to become bitter. And I realized something. This outsider, this woman my family treated like an interloper, had more Ellington spirit than any of my own children. This is insane, Vanessa whispered. He's insane. The Ellington Family Trust was established by my grandfather. Mr. Patterson continued reading, with specific terms. It would pass to the person who best embodied the Ellington values of integrity, perseverance, and strength. Not the person who carried the Ellington name, but the person who earned the Ellington legacy. I was crying now, silent tears running down my face. Naomi, you earned it. The trust is yours. Use it wisely. Build something that matters. And prove to my children what real strength looks like. Mr. Patterson set down the letter. The documents in the Mustang will need to be verified and processed, but according to Mr. Ellington's instructions, Ms. Clark is the sole controller of the Ellington Family Trust effective immediately upon taking possession of the vehicle and its contents. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Vanessa exploded. No. She slammed her hands on the table. Absolutely not. I'll contest this. I'll sue. You can't give away $480 million to some outsider who was married to my brother for 6 years. 5 years, I corrected automatically. Despite your own children. This will is the product of a sick mind. He was clearly incompetent. Mr. Ellington underwent a full psychiatric evaluation 1 month before his death. Mr. Patterson interrupted. He anticipated contests to his will and took appropriate measures. He was examined by 3 separate doctors, all of whom certified his complete mental competency. Additionally, he recorded a video deposition explaining his reasoning in detail. You're welcome to watch it, but I assure you any contest will fail. Bradford was already on his phone, probably calling his lawyer. Thomas had his head in his hands. David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Why? David's voice was barely audible. Why would he do this? I found I had an answer, even though I'd only just understood it myself. Because he was testing all of us. And I was the only one who didn't know I was being tested. You must have known. Vanessa's voice was venomous now. You must have manipulated him somehow. Gotten to him after the divorce, poisoned him against his own children. I haven't spoken to your father since before my divorce was finalized, I said quietly. I haven't contacted any of you. I moved on with my life. Exactly what someone running a long con would say. Mr. Patterson stood. Mrs. Bradford, I strongly suggest you consult with your attorney before making any accusations. Mr. Ellington's will is ironclad. Miss Clark, I'll need you to come with me to verify the contents of the vehicle and begin the transfer process. The Mustang is being transported to our secure facility as we speak. I stood on shaking legs. None of this felt real. 20 minutes ago, I'd been the divorced ex-wife, the failed entrepreneur, the woman who'd been foolish enough to think love could overcome prejudice. Now I was the inheritor of $480 million and the target of the Ellington family's rage. You can't let her walk out of here with our family's money, Vanessa said to Mr. Patterson. There has to be something we can do. It's not your family's money, Mr. Patterson replied calmly. According to the original trust documents, it never was. It was held in trust for whoever proved worthy of it. Mr. Ellington has made his determination. I walked toward the door, my legs feeling disconnected from my body. Naomi, wait. David's voice stopped me. I turned. He looked broken. The golden boy, the favorite son, staring at the woman he divorced because she made his life complicated. Did you know any of this? No. The word came out harder than I intended. I came here expecting nothing, David. Just like I expected nothing from you toward the end of our marriage. That landed like a slap. Good. I'm sorry, he whispered. For how things ended. For not standing up for you. For everything. 6 months ago, those words would have meant something. Now they were just noise. Your father said you choose comfort over courage, I said. He was right. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, just like I'd walked out of our marriage. But this time, I was walking toward something instead of away from it. Mr. Patterson caught up with me in the hallway. Miss Clark, I know this is overwhelming. Mr. Ellington left additional instructions for you in a sealed letter. I'm to give it to you once the trust documents are verified. How long have you known? I asked. About his plans? 6 months. He came to me right after your divorce was finalized and said he wanted to make some changes. He showed me the original trust documents. They'd been in that car since his own father died in 1987. He said he'd been waiting to see who in the family deserved them and that his children had all failed the test. But you hadn't. I didn't do anything special, I said. I just survived them. Perhaps that's exactly what he was looking for. Mr. Patterson smiled slightly. Someone who could survive the Ellingtons and come out the other side with their integrity intact. That's rarer than you might think. We took a car to the secure facility where the Mustang had been transported. I'd been expecting something dramatic, but it was just an old car, powder blue under the rust, flat tires, cracked leather seats. It looked like it had been beautiful once, decades ago. Mr. Ellington left instructions on where to find the documents, Mr. Patterson said, consulting a note. Behind the back seat, there's a false panel in the frame. The release mechanism is under the driver's seat. It took me 20 minutes and a lot of cursing to figure out the mechanism. My hands were filthy by the time I finally heard the click. The panel swung open, revealing a metal box wrapped in protective plastic. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside were documents yellowed with age, a small brass key, and a handwritten letter dated 1952. The letterhead read Ellington Family Trust, Original Charter. Mr. Patterson photographed everything, then carefully unfolded the main document. This is extraordinary. The trust was established by Richard's grandfather, Edmund Ellington, with very specific terms. I read over his shoulder. The language was formal, old-fashioned, but the meaning was clear. The trust would pass to the individual who demonstrates true Ellington character, integrity under pressure, perseverance through adversity, and strength without cruelty. It doesn't mention bloodline, I whispered. No, it doesn't. Edmund apparently didn't trust his descendants to maintain the family values. So he created a mechanism to ensure the money went to someone worthy, regardless of their last name. The brass key was small, ornate. What does this open? According to these documents, a safety deposit box containing the actual trust certificates and account information. The box is at First National Bank, downtown. It's been sitting there for 70 years, accumulating value. My phone buzzed. Then again. And again. Text messages flooding in from numbers I didn't recognize. Someone had leaked what happened at the will reading. The first message was from my mother. Baby, I'm seeing things online. Call me. Then from my former business partner, is it true? Did Richard Ellington really leave you $500 million? Then from people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly very interested in reconnecting. It's starting, Mr. Patterson said grimly. The feeding frenzy. You should prepare yourself. For what? Everything. The Ellingtons will come after you legally, socially, publicly. They'll dig up every mistake you've ever made. They'll paint you as a manipulator, a gold digger who somehow tricked a dying man. And beyond them, every opportunist in the city will suddenly want to be your friend. A new text came through. This one from David. Please call me. We need to talk. There has to be a way to resolve this that's fair to everyone. I showed it to Mr. Patterson. He shook his head. Fair to everyone means you giving up what you were legally left. Don't respond yet. I need a lawyer, I said. A good one. Mr. Ellington arranged for that too. Catherine Walsh. She specializes in trust law and she's ruthless. He retained her services 6 months ago on your behalf. He really thought of everything. He had 70 years to think about it. Edmund Ellington created this test. Richard spent his life watching his children fail it. You were his last chance to prove the system worked. We went to the bank with a police escort, Mr. Patterson insisted. The safety deposit box was in a vault that looked like it hadn't been opened since the 1950s. The brass key fit perfectly. Inside were stock certificates, bond documents, and account statements. The most recent statement showed a balance of $482 million. I sat down hard on the floor of the vault room. Miss Clark. Mr. Patterson knelt beside me. Are you all right? I don't know how to be all right with this. I looked at the papers spread around me. 6 months ago, I was eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. I was trying to figure out how to pay off my student loans before I turned 40. And now you control more money than you can spend in 10 lifetimes. Why me? Really? I'm not special. I just try to be a good person. Maybe that's exactly the point, he said gently. In a family of people who felt entitled to everything, you asked for nothing. In a family that valued money over character, you valued yourself enough to walk away. Edmund Ellington built his fortune from nothing. Maybe he wanted it to go to someone who understood what nothing felt like. My phone rang. Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. Immediately, she called again. You should block them, Mr. Patterson advised. At least until you've had time to process this. But I listened to the voicemail anyway. You think you've won something. Vanessa's voice was ice. You think Dad's little game means anything. But that money belongs to this family. We built the business that funded that trust. We are Ellingtons. You're nobody. A temporary inconvenience who happened to marry my idiot brother for 5 minutes. I will spend every dollar I have to prove you manipulated a sick old man, and when I'm done, you'll wish you never heard the Ellington name. The second voicemail was from Thomas, more measured but equally clear. Naomi, let's be reasonable. This situation benefits no one if it turns into a legal war. Call me. We can work something out that's fair. The third was from David. I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be. But please, don't let what happened between us destroy my family. That money could do so much good if it stays with the foundation, with the company, with the people who know how to manage it. Please call me. Mr. Patterson was right. They were already positioning me as the villain. Catherine Walsh arrived at the bank 30 minutes later. She was 50-something, expensively dressed, and had the demeanor of someone who won every argument she entered. Miss Clark. I've been expecting this call for 6 months. She shook my hand firmly. Richard Ellington was thorough in his instructions. I'm to represent you against any and all challenges to the trust, and I'm to ensure you understand exactly what you're inheriting. What am I inheriting? Besides a target on my back. She smiled. Freedom. Power. And a choice about what kind of person you want to be. We moved to a conference room. Catherine spread out documents explaining the trust structure, the assets, the implications. The trust is separate from Ellington Manufacturing Corporation, she explained. The company Richard left to his children is worth approximately $340 million. The trust you now control is worth $482 million. Different entities, different purposes. So I'm not taking the family business? No. You're taking the family wealth. The seed money that built the business came from this trust, but the company itself was structured separately. Richard was clever that way. Can they contest it? They can try. They'll fail. Edmund Ellington's original trust document is airtight. Richard's will is airtight. Your ownership is documented across 7 decades of legal filings. Unless they can prove you forged documents from 1952, they have no case. They'll try anyway. Of course. The Ellingtons don't lose gracefully. Expect them to challenge your character, your motives, your relationship with Richard. They'll claim undue influence, despite the fact that you never spoke to him after your divorce. They'll hire investigators, leak stories to the press, make your life uncomfortable. How do I fight that? You live well. You make smart choices with the money. You prove Richard was right about you. Catherine leaned forward. But first, you need to decide what you want. Because this isn't just about defending what you were given. It's about what you do with it. I thought about my failed business, about the platform I'd wanted to build for small businesses owned by people who looked like me. About the dreams I'd had before the Ellingtons made me feel small. I want to build something, I said slowly. Something that helps people who come from where I came from. People who work 3 jobs and still can't get ahead. People who have good ideas but no connections. I want to do what Richard's grandfather did, build something from nothing. But I want to do it for people who actually need it. Catherine smiled. Then we're going to get along just fine. But you need to understand something, Naomi. The moment you start spending this money on causes the Ellingtons don't approve of, they'll escalate. They'll see it as theft of their legacy. It's not their legacy anymore. No, it's yours. The question is whether you're ready for what that means. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David. Vanessa's talking to reporters. Please, let me help manage this before it gets worse. Too late for that. By the time I got home that evening, News vans were parked outside my modest apartment building. Reporters shouted questions as I pushed through. "Miss Clark, is it true you inherited $500 million? Did you manipulate Richard Ellington? How does it feel to take money from your ex-husband's family?" I made it inside without answering, but my hands were shaking as I locked the door. My mother called immediately. "Baby, what is happening? I'm seeing your name on the news." I explained everything, the will reading, the car, the trust, the money. She was silent for a long time. "Mama, that man tested you," she said finally. "Richard Ellington watched you marry his son, watched his family treat you terribly, watched you survive it all, and he tested you. That's not kindness, Naomi. That's manipulation." "Maybe, but the money's real. Money's always real. The question is what it costs you to keep it." She was right, but I was too tired to think about it. I ordered food, ignored my phone, and tried to process what my life had become in the space of 6 hours. The news coverage was brutal. Headlines like "Gold Digger Gets Ellington Fortune" and "Ex-Wife Manipulates Dying Billionaire" dominated. The stories painted me as calculating, opportunistic, a woman who'd married into wealth and somehow conned her way into an inheritance she didn't deserve. Vanessa gave an interview calling me a stranger to our family who took advantage of a grieving old man's confusion. David released a statement saying he hoped for an amicable resolution that honored his father's memory while being fair to all parties. Thomas said nothing publicly, but sources close to the family reported he was devastated by his father's decision. Only Catherine seemed unbothered. "Let them rage," she said when I called her, panicking. "Public opinion doesn't change legal reality. You own that trust. Nothing they say can change that. They're destroying my reputation. They're trying to, but you get to decide if they succeed. Ignore them. Focus on your plans and let the lawyers handle the noise." Easier said than done when my inbox was flooded with messages from people I'd known years ago, all suddenly very supportive and interested in my projects. One message stood out, though. From an email address I didn't recognize. "Congratulations on your inheritance. Your ex-husband's family deserves everything coming to them. If you need any information about the Ellingtons' business practices or personal lives, I have files that might interest you. A friend." I showed it to Catherine. "Delete it," she said immediately. "That's bait. Probably from a reporter trying to get you to engage in something unethical they can use against you." I deleted it. But I couldn't help wondering what files. What secrets did the Ellingtons have that someone wanted to expose? The answer came sooner than I expected. The lawsuit arrived 3 days later. Vanessa, Thomas, and David, united for once, filed a joint contest of Richard's will, claiming diminished mental capacity, undue influence, and fraud. Catherine had warned me, but seeing their names together on legal documents still stung. Especially David's. Part of me had hoped he'd stay out of it. "They're alleging you had secret contact with Richard after your divorce," Catherine explained over coffee at her office. "They claim you manipulated him emotionally, took advantage of his grief over your failed marriage, and convinced him to disinherit his own children." I never spoke to him. Not once. I know. And we can prove it. Phone records, security footage, witness statements. Richard was meticulous about documenting that you had zero contact with him. He knew they'd make these claims. So why do I feel like I'm losing? Because they're winning the PR battle. That's intentional. They want you to feel isolated, attacked, pressured into a settlement. Don't give in. But the pressure was everywhere. My mother called daily, worried about the stress. My few remaining friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the attention. I couldn't go to the grocery store without someone recognizing me, judging me. Work became impossible. My boss called me in for a conversation. "Naomi, you're a valued employee, but the media attention is becoming Problematic. Reporters are calling the office. It's disruptive. I can work from home. He shifted uncomfortably. The thing is, with this inheritance, do you even need this job? Maybe it's time to focus on your new situation. They were firing me. Politely, but firing me nonetheless. I cleaned out my desk that afternoon, another piece of my normal life stripped away. The anonymous emails continued. Different addresses, same message. Information about the Ellingtons in exchange for money or leverage. I deleted them all, but they kept coming. Then the personal attacks escalated. Someone leaked my financial records, the student loans, my mother's medical bills, my failed business debts. Articles appeared analyzing every dollar I'd ever spent, painting a picture of someone desperate for money. Look at her spending patterns, one financial analyst said on a news segment. This is someone who is drowning in debt. Of course she'd be motivated to manipulate a wealthy old man. My mother's cancer treatment became fodder for speculation. Did she use her mother's illness to gain sympathy from Richard Ellington? My father's past gambling problem, exaggerated and distorted, became evidence of my morally compromised upbringing. It was character assassination by 1,000 cuts. They're thorough, Catherine admitted. Vanessa hired a top-tier PR firm. They're running a coordinated campaign to destroy your credibility before the legal challenge is even heard. How do I fight this? You don't. Not yet. You stay quiet, let them overplay their hand, and when the time is right, we respond with facts. But staying quiet felt like drowning. David started calling from different numbers when I blocked him. He'd leave voicemails, his voice a mix of pleading and frustration. Naomi, this is insane. You know this isn't what Dad really wanted. He was angry at us, testing us, trying to make a point. But you taking all that money while my family falls apart? That's not justice. That's revenge. Delete. I know I hurt you. I know I should have defended you better when we were married. But punishing my entire family for my mistakes isn't fair. We can work this out. Just talk to me. Delete. Vanessa's out of control. She's hiring investigators, feeding stories to the press. If you'd just agree to a reasonable split of the trust, I could get her to back off. Please, before this gets worse. I almost called him back after that one. Almost. Then I found out what worse meant. Investigators showed up at my parents' house in Baltimore. My mother called, shaken. Men came to the door asking questions about you. About your childhood, your relationships, whether you ever talked about marrying Rich. They upset your father. I'm so sorry, Mama. They made it sound like you did something wrong. Like you're a criminal. Baby, what's happening? The Ellingtons are trying to prove I manipulated Richard. They're not going to find anything because there's nothing to find, but they're looking everywhere. This money isn't worth this stress, Naomi. Maybe you should. Give it back. I finished. That's what they want. They want me to feel so harassed, so attacked, so isolated that I just hand over what was legally left to me. Was it worth it, though? That man tested you like a lab rat. He watched his family abuse you and did nothing to stop it, then rewarded you after it broke your marriage. That's not kindness. She had a point. But I thought about Edmund Ellington's trust document, about building something for people who needed it, about proving that Richard had been right to choose me. I'm not giving it back, I said. The pressure got worse. My landlord received calls suggesting I was involved in illegal activity. My car was keyed in the parking lot. Someone left a note on my door. Thief. Catherine filed for restraining orders and police reports, but the harassment was always just subtle enough to be deniable. Welcome to how the wealthy fight, she said. They don't just use courts. They use every resource available to make your life unbearable. Meanwhile, the legal case was progressing. Depositions were scheduled. I spent hours with Catherine preparing for questions designed to trap me. They'll ask about every conversation you had with Richard. Every interaction, no matter how small. There weren't any. That's the truth. Truth is only part of this. They'll twist your words, imply meanings that don't exist, create narratives out of nothing. You need to be absolutely precise in your answers. The depositions were brutal. Vanessa's lawyer was a sharp woman named Patricia Hendricks who smiled while she eviscerated people. Miss Clark, you were married to David Ellington for 5 years? Yes. And during that time, you had regular contact with Richard Ellington? At family dinners, yes. How would you characterize your relationship with him? Distant. Polite. He barely spoke to me. But you were aware of his wealth? Of course. It wasn't a secret. And you were aware that as David's wife, you might benefit from that wealth someday? I signed a prenup specifically preventing that. A prenup that covered marital assets. But Richard could leave you something in his will regardless of any prenup, couldn't he? I never thought about it. Never? Not once in 5 years of marriage did you consider that your wealthy father-in-law might leave you something when he died. I saw the trap. If I said yes, I was calculating. If I said no, I was lying. I assumed I'd get nothing, I said carefully. Given how he felt about me. How did he feel about you? He thought I was a gold digger who trapped his son. Did he ever say that to you directly? No. He barely spoke to me directly. So you're speculating about his feelings? I'm interpreting his behavior. His behavior of leaving you $482 million? I was shocked by that. I still am. Shocked? Or pleased with how your long game paid off? Catherine objected, but the implication hung in the room. They deposed my mother, asking invasive questions about my childhood, my relationship with money, whether I'd ever expressed interest in wealthy men. They deposed David, who testified that I'd never mentioned his father's money as a factor in our relationship, but that I'd been very interested in the family business. She asked a lot of questions, he said. About how the company worked, about the family assets, about succession planning. Of course I had. I'd been trying to understand my husband's world, to connect with him about his work. Now it was being used as evidence of calculated scheming. They even deposed Mr. Patterson, though Catherine objected strenuously. Did Richard Ellington seem competent when he revised his will? Vanessa's lawyer asked. Completely. He was sharp, clear, and very specific about his intentions. Did he express any negative feelings toward his children? He expressed disappointment. Disappointment he might have been manipulated into feeling by someone? No. Disappointment based on decades of observing their behavior. The depositions gave the Ellingtons ammunition for their media campaign. Headlines twisted every exchange into evidence of my guilt. But Catherine was building our defense. She had Richard's psychiatric evaluations, his medical records proving cognitive health, his documented reasoning for every decision. They're making noise, she assured me. But they have no case. Then Vanessa found a new angle. A press conference perfectly staged. Vanessa in a black suit, flanked by David and Thomas, looking somber and wounded. Our father was a great man who built an empire from nothing, she began. He dedicated his life to his family and his business. In his final months, he was grieving. Grieving the breakdown of David's marriage, grieving what he saw as failures in his children. He was vulnerable. She paused for effect. We've discovered evidence that Naomi Clark had indirect contact with our father through third parties after her divorce. That she used mutual acquaintances to feed him information designed to turn him against his own children. That she engineered this entire situation to punish our family for not accepting her. My phone exploded with calls. Catherine was already calling back. It's bullshit, she said immediately. They have no evidence because it didn't happen. This is desperation. What third parties? What mutual acquaintances? Probably Richard's doctor or lawyer, people you met in passing during your marriage. They'll claim any interaction, however innocent, was part of a conspiracy. But the damage was done. The narrative shifted from gold digger to calculated manipulator who destroyed a family from the inside. I watched my reputation disintegrate in real time. Then the anonymous emailer made contact again, this time with specifics. The Ellingtons are hiding financial impropriety. Vanessa embezzled from company accounts. Thomas has offshore holdings that violate tax law. David knew about both. I have proof. Meet me. I showed Catherine. It could be real, she said slowly. Or it could be a setup. They send someone to offer you dirt on them, you meet with this person, they photograph it and claim you're hiring investigators to dig up blackmail material. So I ignore it? For now. If there's real financial crime, it'll surface eventually. Don't give them ammunition to use against you. But the information gnawed at me. If they were criminals, if they'd stolen from their own company, didn't that matter? I was wrestling with that question when my mother's health took a turn. She'd been cancer-free for 2 years, but the stress triggered complications. She collapsed at work, rushed to the hospital with pneumonia and dangerous blood pressure. I drove to Baltimore immediately and found my father in the waiting room, looking 10 years older. "This is killing her," he said quietly. "The stress, the reporters, the investigators asking our neighbors about you. It's too much." "I'm sorry, Dad." "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're choosing money over your family's peace." That hurt more than anything the Ellingtons had said. "That money can help people, Dad." "It can. It's helping you destroy yourself. You think you're fighting some righteous battle, but you're just letting yourself be used. That dead man used you to punish his kids, and now you're using his money to punish them back. Where does it end, Naomi?" I had no answer. My mother recovered, but her doctor was clear. She needed to avoid stress. The very thing that was impossible while I remained in the center of this legal war. David somehow found out and showed up at the hospital. "I heard about your mom. I'm sorry. You need to leave. Naomi, please. Look at what this is doing. Your mother's in the hospital. My family's tearing itself apart. Dad's company is suffering because we're all distracted fighting over his money. This isn't what he wanted. You don't know what he wanted. I know he wanted to teach us a lesson." "Fine. Lesson learned. But he wouldn't want your mother sick over this. Let's end it. We split the trust. Everyone gets something. We all move on." For a moment, I almost considered it. Then I remembered Vanessa's laughter at the will reading. Her comment about bus tickets. 5 years of subtle and not-so-subtle racism. David's spineless silence every single time. "No," I said. "Your father left me that trust because he believed I earned it. I'm not giving it back because fighting for it became inconvenient. Even if it kills you? Or your mother. Don't you dare put that on me. You chose to fight this. Vanessa chose to hire investigators and PR firms. You chose to make this ugly. You could end it with one phone call. So could you." He left, and I stayed with my mother until she was stable enough to go home. Catherine called with news. The court date was set. 3 months. Until then, the depositions would continue, the media circus would rage, and my life would remain in suspension. 3 months of this? I asked. 3 months until we win. Then you can start actually living your life. Building what you want to build. If I survive that long. The envelope arrived at Catherine's office, marked confidential, urgent. Inside were financial documents, dozens of them, spanning 5 years. "This is what the anonymous emailer was talking about," Catherine said, spreading the papers across her conference table. "And it's worse than I expected." The documents showed systematic embezzlement from Ellington Manufacturing Corporation. Vanessa had been siphoning money through shell companies, small amounts at first, then increasingly bold transfers. Over 5 years, she'd stolen nearly $12 million. Thomas was complicit, Catherine pointed to another set of documents. He created the offshore accounts where the money was hidden. And David. David what? David signed off on quarterly reports that should have caught the discrepancies. Either he was criminally negligent or deliberately looked the way. I sat down hard. They're thieves. They're actual thieves, and they're suing me for stealing from them. The irony is spectacular, Catherine agreed. The question is what we do with this information. We use it. We destroy them with it. We could. But consider the optics. If we release this now, it looks like retaliation. Like we're manufacturing evidence to discredit them. It's not manufactured. It's real. I know. But we need to verify everything, trace the money, build an airtight case. If we go public with half-verified financial crimes, we become the story instead of them. Let me bring in forensic accountants, do this properly. I agreed, but the knowledge burned. They'd stood in that conference room calling me a gold digger while sitting on millions in stolen money. The next deposition was mine, and Patricia Hendricks came prepared. Miss Clark, when did you first become aware of the Ellington Family Trust? At the will reading. Never before that? Never. You expect us to believe that in 5 years of marriage, the subject of a $480 million trust never came up? I didn't know it existed. How convenient. And you had no idea Richard Ellington was planning to leave you anything? None. She slid a document across the table. This is a visitor log from Richard Ellington's estate. It shows you visited 3 times after your divorce. My blood went cold. That's not possible. Are you calling this document fraudulent? I looked closer. The dates were from the 6 months after my divorce. The signature looked like mine, but wasn't. I never visited Richard after my divorce. That signature isn't mine. It certainly looks like your signature. It's a forgery. Catherine jumped in. We'll need to examine the original document. This appears to be a photocopy, which makes authentication impossible. The original is with the estate security records. Then we'll subpoena it and have a handwriting expert examine it. But the damage was already done. Patricia had what she needed for the next press release. That evening, the story broke. Ex-wife caught in lie about contact with Ellington. The article included a grainy photo of the visitor log, with my alleged signature circled in red. Social media exploded. She lied under oath. This proves manipulation. Lock her up. Even people who'd been sympathetic turned against me. How could I claim no contact when there was documented proof? Catherine worked through the night with forensic experts. By morning, she had answers. The original log was altered, she explained. Someone added those entries after the fact. The ink is different, the paper shows signs of tampering, and the handwriting analysis confirms it's not your signature. Vanessa did this. Probably. Or someone working for her. But proving it is harder than proving it's fake. We can discredit their evidence, but we can't necessarily prove who created it. This is insane. This is how desperate they are. They're fabricating evidence now. We filed an emergency motion showing the forgery, and the judge was not pleased. The Ellingtons' legal team scrambled to distance themselves from the altered documents, claiming it must have been a mistake by estate staff. But the public narrative was set. Half the people believed I was a liar caught red-handed. The other half thought the Ellingtons were so corrupt they'd forged documents. Nobody came out looking good. My mother called, crying. They're saying you perjured yourself. That you could go to jail. It's a lie, Mama. They forged those records. How can you fight people like this? They have unlimited money, unlimited power. They'll destroy you. Only if I let them. But I was starting to wonder if I could actually win. Then David showed up at my apartment at midnight drunk. You ruined everything, he slurred when I opened the door. My family, my life, everything. You need to leave. Do you know what Vanessa's doing? She's talking about selling the company. Liquidating everything to fund the legal fight against you. Dad's legacy gone because you won't just give back what isn't yours. It is mine. Legally, morally, it's mine. You're destroying us. He slammed his hand against the doorframe. My father gave you that trust to punish us, and you're letting him do it from the grave. Your father gave me that trust because I was the only person who didn't feel entitled to it. You think you're so noble, but you're just as greedy as you claim we are. You could end this. You could take half and let us have half. But you won't, because you want us to suffer. I want you to leave me alone. I loved you, he said, and there were tears in his eyes now. I really did. And you're using Dad's posthumous middle finger to us to make me regret ever meeting you. You should regret how you treated me. How you let them treat me. I know. His voice broke. I know I was weak. I know I should have defended you. But I was trying to keep peace with everyone, and I lost you instead. And now I'm losing everything else too. For a second, I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered 5 years of keeping peace, while his sister called me "you people," and his father investigated my family like criminals. Go home, David. Sober up. And stop blaming me for consequences you all earned. He left, stumbling down the hallway. I called Catherine. David just showed up drunk. Should I be worried? Document everything. Time, what he said, his condition. If he's unraveling, he might do something stupid that helps our case. He said Vanessa's talking about selling the company. Catherine was quiet for a moment. That would be catastrophic for them. The company is their primary asset. If they're considering that, they're more desperate than I thought. Good. Be careful, Naomi. Desperate people are dangerous. I found out what she meant 2 days later. Someone leaked my therapy records from after the divorce. Every private session where I'd processed my feelings about the marriage, the racism, the isolation. Every vulnerable moment where I'd admitted to feeling worthless, used, destroyed. The headlines were brutal. Ellington ex-wife admits to depression and suicidal thoughts. The articles implied mental instability. Suggested I was too emotionally compromised to handle a massive fortune. Questioned my competence to control the trust. I called my therapist, Dr. Morrison, in tears. How did they get my records? Those are protected. I don't know. I certainly didn't release them. This is a serious HIPAA violation. I'm contacting my lawyers immediately. But the damage was done. My private pain was now public entertainment. Catherine was furious. This crosses every legal and ethical line. We'll file criminal complaints, sue for damages, get injunctions. But first, we need to figure out how they obtained sealed medical records. The investigation revealed a staff member at the medical practice had been bribed. $50,000 for copies of my file. The employee was fired and arrested, but the records were already out there. Vanessa's fingerprints are all over this, Catherine said. But proving she ordered it versus it being a rogue investigator is nearly impossible. So she just gets away with it? For now. But we're building a pattern of misconduct. When we get to trial, the judge will see who they really are. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every day brought new violations, new humiliations, new attacks. My father called with the final blow. Your mother's cancer is back. Stage 4. The doctor says the stress may have triggered the recurrence. Everything stopped. What? She collapsed again this morning. They ran tests. It's in her lungs now, her liver. They're starting aggressive treatment, but... His voice broke. They're saying maybe 6 months. I drove to Baltimore in a daze. Found my mother in a hospital bed, looking small and tired. Baby, she said when she saw me. Don't cry. Mama, I'm so sorry. This isn't your fault. The stress. Cancer doesn't care about stress. It does what it wants. She took my hand. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't give up that money because of me. Don't let them win because you're scared or guilty. Your father thinks you should walk away from all this, but I know better. Mama, that money represents something. Not just dollars. It represents a man who saw your worth when his own children couldn't. It represents you surviving people who tried to break you. Don't let my sickness be the thing that makes you surrender what you earned. I don't care about money if I lose you. You're going to lose me anyway, baby. That's already decided. But what happens after, whether you let them take what's yours or whether you fight, that's still up to you. I stayed with her for 3 days. When I returned to Philadelphia, I found my apartment had been broken into. Nothing stolen, but everything searched. Drawers opened, papers scattered, a clear message: nowhere was safe. Catherine filed police reports and arranged for security, but we both knew what it meant. They're looking for anything they can use, she said. Evidence, dirt, leverage. This is scorched earth now. How much worse can it get? I found out the next week. Thomas went public with a statement claiming I'd had an affair with Richard Ellington. That our relationship had been inappropriate, possibly sexual, and that the trust was payment for services rendered. It was so vile, so completely fabricated, that I couldn't breathe when I read it. He's saying I slept with my 73-year-old father-in-law for money? Catherine's face was stone. He's saying whatever he thinks will stick. This is defamation, pure and simple. We'll sue him personally for this. Richard barely spoke to me. We were never alone together. This is insane. It's also easily disprovable. Richard's security records, staff testimony, phone records, all of it shows you had minimal contact. But Thomas is gambling that the accusation alone will damage you enough that the truth doesn't matter. The accusation did exactly what Thomas intended. Even people who defended me started to wonder. The innuendo was everywhere. My few remaining friends distanced themselves further. Old colleagues stopped returning calls. I was toxic, damaged, possibly a woman who'd slept her way into a fortune. I spent 3 days in bed, unable to face the world. Then the forensic accountants Catherine hired finished their analysis of the embezzlement documents. It's worse than we thought, Catherine said over the phone. Vanessa didn't steal $12 million. She stole $47 million over 8 years. Thomas created 17 different shell companies to hide the money. And David knew everything. There are emails where he explicitly discussed covering it up. $47 million? They've been systematically looting their father's company while accusing you of being a thief. The hypocrisy is staggering. We release this now. Today, we destroy them. Naomi, I know you're angry. They accuse me of sleeping with their father. They leaked my therapy records. They caused my mother's cancer to come back. I'm done playing nice. Catherine was quiet for a moment. If we release this now, we win the PR battle. But we might complicate the legal case. Once this becomes public, they'll claim we're manufacturing evidence to distract from our weak legal position. Our position isn't weak. I know that. The judge will know that. But juries are unpredictable, and if this goes to trial, we need them to see clear facts, not a mudslinging contest. So I just keep taking their abuse? For 8 more weeks. Then we get to court, present everything, the embezzlement, the forgeries, the harassment, and we win decisively. Not just the trust, but moral victory. I wanted to argue. But she was right. 8 weeks, I agreed. Then we end this. I spent those 8 weeks in hell. My mother's condition deteriorated. I drove to Baltimore every weekend, watching her fade. The media coverage intensified. Vanessa gave more interviews, painting herself as a grieving daughter fighting to protect her father's legacy from a con artist. David released a tearful video talking about how much he regretted ever bringing me into his family. Thomas appeared on financial news programs discussing the importance of protecting family businesses from opportunists. And I stayed silent because Catherine said silence was strategy. The anonymous emailer made contact one final time. You have 8 weeks until court. They're planning something big for the trial. Watch Vanessa's lawyer. She has evidence you haven't seen yet. Be ready. I showed Catherine. Could be real. Could be paranoia. Either way, we're as prepared as we can be. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something I hadn't anticipated. The night before the trial began, my mother called. I'm not going to make it to see how this ends, am I? She asked. Don't talk like that. Naomi, baby, I need you to listen. Whatever happens in that courtroom, remember who you are. You're not what they say you are. You're my daughter. You're strong and good and worthy. Don't let them take that from you, no matter what else they take. I love you, Mama. I know. Now go win this thing. The trial started the next morning. The courtroom was exactly what I expected. Polished wood, high ceilings, and the Ellington family seated together like a united front. Vanessa in a designer suit that probably cost more than my rent. Thomas looking somber and respectable. David with his head down, the repentant son. I sat alone on my side, Catherine beside me, feeling the weight of their collective judgment. Judge Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd reportedly seen every trick in the book. She looked at both sides with equal skepticism. This is a bench trial, she announced. I'll be deciding on the validity of Mr. Ellington's will and the claims of undue influence, diminished capacity, and fraud. Let's proceed. Patricia Hendricks stood, smoothing her skirt. Your Honor, we will prove that Richard Ellington was manipulated by Ms. Clark during a period of vulnerability, that he was suffering from diminished mental capacity in his final months, and that the will as written does not reflect his true intentions, but rather the calculated influence of a woman who saw an opportunity to enrich herself. Catherine's turn. Your Honor, we will prove that Richard Ellington was of completely sound mind when he revised his will, that he had explicit and well-documented reasons for every decision he made, and that Miss Clark had zero contact with him after her divorce. The evidence will show this contest is nothing more than entitled children angry that their father held them accountable for their behavior. The first week was testimony about Richard's mental state. His doctors testified he'd been sharp, clear, engaged until the day he died. The psychiatrist who'd evaluated him described detailed conversations about his reasoning. He was disappointed in his children, Dr. Shaw testified. He felt they'd become entitled, cruel in Vanessa's case, passive in Thomas's case, and weak in David's case. He wanted his legacy to go to someone who would use it meaningfully. Patricia cross-examined aggressively. Isn't disappointment in one's children a sign of depression? Not necessarily. Could depression have affected his judgment? He wasn't depressed. He was clear-eyed about his family's flaws. Flaws allegedly told to him by Ms. Clark? No. Flaws he observed over decades. But Patricia planted seeds of doubt. Could grief over the divorce have clouded his thinking? Could he have been lonely, vulnerable to manipulation? The second week brought character witnesses. People who'd known Richard described him as shrewd, calculating, not someone easily fooled. Then Patricia called her witnesses. A former estate employee testified that I'd been very friendly with Richard during family dinners. She would seek him out, ask him questions, seem very interested in his stories. Catherine's cross-examination was sharp. Isn't that called being polite? I suppose, but... Did you ever witness any inappropriate contact between Ms. Clark and Mr. Ellington? No. Any private meetings? No. Any indication of manipulation? Well, no, but the attention seemed calculated. Or maybe she was trying to connect with her father-in-law like any daughter-in-law would? The witness had no answer. But the testimony created an impression. I'd been too friendly, too interested, too something. Week 3 brought the forged visitor logs. Catherine's handwriting expert demolished them, showing clear evidence of alteration and forgery. These entries were added months after the original log was created, the expert testified. The ink composition is different, the pressure patterns are inconsistent, and the handwriting doesn't match Ms. Clark's verified signature. Judge Morrison looked displeased. Who had access to these logs? Patricia's team scrambled. We received them from Estate Security, Your Honor. We had no reason to believe they weren't authentic. Someone forged evidence in a legal proceeding. That's a crime. But proving who ordered the forgery was impossible. The security company claimed the documents had been in storage, accessible to multiple people. Catherine used it to establish a pattern. This is how desperate the Ellington children are. They'll fabricate evidence rather than accept their father's lawful decision. Then came the leaked therapy records. Catherine filed them as Exhibit A in a harassment claim. Ms. Clark's private medical records were illegally obtained and leaked to damage her reputation. The employee who stole them admitted to being paid by an investigator hired by the Ellington family. Patricia objected. That investigator acted independently. We never authorized theft of medical records. But you benefited from it, Catherine shot back. And you failed to condemn it. Judge Morrison made notes. I could see her opinion shifting, but whether it was enough remained unclear. Week 4 brought the accusation I'd been dreading. Thomas took the stand, looking reluctant. I didn't want to bring this up, but in the interest of truth, I believe my father may have had inappropriate feelings for Naomi. The courtroom stirred. I felt physically sick. What makes you believe that? Patricia asked. He talked about her often after the divorce. How impressive she was, how strong. It seemed excessive. And then leaving her this enormous trust while cutting his own children down. It suggests emotional involvement beyond normal regard. Catherine stood immediately. Objection. This is pure speculation based on no evidence. It's based on observed behavior, Patricia countered. Judge Morrison sustained the objection, but the poison was in the water. Catherine's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Ellington, do you have any evidence of inappropriate contact between your father and Ms. Clark? Not direct evidence, but any witnesses who saw inappropriate behavior? No, but any communication suggesting a romantic relationship? No. So you're testifying about your feelings and speculation? I'm testifying about my observations. Observations that conveniently paint Ms. Clark as a woman who'd seduce her elderly father-in-law for money? That's not what I said. Isn't it exactly what you implied? Thomas had no answer. But again, the damage was done. Some people would always wonder. During a recess, David approached me in the hallway. I'm sorry about Thomas. That was too far. You're all sitting together. You're all on the same team. I don't agree with everything they're doing. But you're not stopping them either. Same as always. He flinched. What do you want from me, Naomi? I can't control what they say. You could withdraw from the contest. You could stand up and tell the truth, that I never manipulated anyone, that your father made his choice for clear reasons, that this is just your family refusing to accept accountability. If I do that, I lose everything. Vanessa will shut me out completely. And that's more important than the truth? He walked away without answering. That night, my mother was rushed to the hospital again. I left the trial to be with her. She was barely conscious, the cancer having spread aggressively. The doctors said maybe days now. Mama, I'm here. Her eyes opened slightly. How's the trial? I don't know. It's hard to tell. You winning? I think so. Catherine says we have a strong case. Then why do you look so defeated? Because even if I win, I've lost so much. My reputation, my privacy, my peace. And now I'm losing you. She squeezed my hand weakly. You haven't lost yourself, though. That's what matters. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're a fighter. You're someone who doesn't quit even when quitting would be easier. You're going to win that trial, take that money, and build something beautiful. Promise me. I promise, Mama. She closed her eyes. Good. Now go back to court and finish this. I stayed until she fell asleep, then drove back to Philadelphia in the early morning hours. The trial resumed with financial testimony. Catherine's forensic accountants presented their findings about the embezzlement. Over 8 years, approximately $47 million was systematically transferred from Ellington Manufacturing Corporation through a series of shell companies ultimately controlled by Vanessa Ellington Bradford. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison called for order. Patricia was on her feet. Your Honor, these allegations are baseless and irrelevant to the matter at hand. They're completely relevant, Catherine interrupted. They establish character. The Ellington children are accusing Ms. Clark of stealing money she was legally given while they themselves have stolen tens of millions from their father's company. These are unproven accusations. They're documented transactions. Bank records, corporate filings, email communications. All obtained legally and verified by 3 independent accounting firms. Vanessa stood up. This is a lie. A complete fabrication. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. Mrs. Bradford, sit down. You'll have your chance to respond during testimony. But Vanessa wouldn't sit. She's manufacturing evidence to distract from her manipulation of my father. This is exactly what a con artist does, creates chaos and lies to avoid accountability. Mrs. Bradford, sit down now or I'll hold you in contempt. Vanessa finally sat, her face red with rage. The testimony continued. Email after email showing Vanessa authorizing transfers. Thomas creating offshore accounts. David signing reports that should have flagged the discrepancies. Patricia tried to minimize it. Even if these transactions occurred, they were internal family business matters, not theft. They were embezzlement, Catherine stated flatly. From a company where Richard Ellington was majority shareholder. They stole from their own father. By the end of that day, the Ellingtons looked less like grieving children and more like criminals. But Patricia wasn't done. Your Honor, we have new evidence. Evidence that came to light just last week that substantially changes the nature of this case. My stomach dropped. The anonymous emailer's warning. Patricia produced a document. This is a contract signed by Ms. Clark and Richard Ellington 6 weeks before his death. That's impossible, I whispered to Catherine. I never signed anything with Richard. Catherine stood. Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of this document. We haven't had opportunity to examine it or verify its authenticity. It was discovered in Mr. Ellington's personal safe, which wasn't opened until last week, Patricia said smoothly. We disclosed it immediately upon discovery. Judge Morrison looked skeptical. What is the nature of this contract? It's a consulting agreement. Ms. Clark agreed to provide business consulting services to Mr. Ellington for a fee of $500,000. It's dated 6 weeks before his death, well after the divorce. The courtroom was silent. I never signed that, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The signature appears authentic, Patricia continued. And it establishes that Ms. Clark did have contact with Mr. Ellington after her divorce, contrary to her testimony. Catherine grabbed the document, studying it intensely. This is another forgery. It has to be. But as she examined it, her face grew pale. The signature looked perfect. Too perfect. Judge Morrison called a recess. Catherine pulled me into a private room. Tell me the truth. Did you have any contact with Richard after your divorce? Anything at all that they could be twisting into this? Nothing. I swear. I never spoke to him, never saw him, never signed anything. This signature is very good. If it's a forgery, it's professional level. It has to be. I never signed this. Catherine made calls. Brought in the handwriting expert who debunked the visitor logs. 2 days later, we had our answer. It's a forgery, the expert confirmed. But an extremely sophisticated one. Someone traced Ms. Clark's signature using specialized equipment. To the naked eye, it's perfect. But under magnification, you can see the hesitation marks consistent with tracing rather than natural signature flow. Catherine presented this to the court, but the damage was harder to undo this time. The signature looked real. My denials looked defensive. And Patricia hammered it. Ms. Clark has lied repeatedly about contact with Richard Ellington. First the visitor logs, now this contract. At what point do we acknowledge a pattern of deception? Both documents are proven forgeries, Catherine countered. Proven by experts she hired. Experts with a financial interest in supporting her story. The trial was turning into a circus. Then my mother died. I got the call during lunch recess. My father, barely able to speak through his sobs. She's gone, baby. Your mama's gone. I collapsed in the courthouse bathroom. Catherine found me there, helped me to my feet. We need to request a continuance. You need time. No. We finished this. That's what Mama wanted. Naomi. She told me not to quit. So we don't quit. I testified that afternoon with tears still drying on my face. Told my story simply, directly. How I'd met David, married into a family that never accepted me, endured their racism and cruelty, signed a prenup, expected nothing. I didn't manipulate Richard Ellington, I said clearly. I barely knew him. He investigated me, tolerated me at best, and ignored me at worst. His decision to leave me that trust was as shocking to me as it was to his children. Patricia's cross-examination was merciless. Your mother just died. You're under enormous stress. Are you certain your memories of events are accurate? My mother's death doesn't change what happened. Grief can distort perception. I'm not misremembering anything. I never had contact with Richard Ellington after my divorce. Those documents are forgeries. That's the truth. A truth supported only by your word and experts you're paying? A truth supported by security records, phone logs, witness testimony, and basic logic. Why would Richard Ellington leave me this trust if I'd manipulated him? Wouldn't that prove I succeeded? He left it to me because I didn't try to manipulate him. Because I walked away with nothing and rebuilt my life. That's what impressed him. For a moment, Patricia had no response. Then she smiled. Or he left it to you because you're very, very good at playing the long game. The trial recessed for my mother's funeral. I buried her on a gray Tuesday with my father and a handful of relatives. No Ellingtons attended, but reporters photographed the whole thing. The headlines the next day, grief-stricken heiress buries mother while fighting for fortune. They made even my mother's death about the money. I returned to court emptied out. Nothing left to hurt, nothing left to take. Catherine rested our case. Patricia rested theirs. Judge Morrison said she'd issue a ruling within 2 weeks. This has been one of the most contentious cases I've presided over, she said. I'll be examining all evidence carefully before making a determination. I went home to my apartment, which felt enormous and empty. David called. I'm sorry about your mother. She was a good woman. Don't. I mean it. And I'm sorry this trial happened while she was dying. That's not what I wanted. But you didn't stop it. No, I didn't. Then your condolences mean nothing. I hung up. Catherine called daily with updates that weren't really updates. The judge was deliberating. Could go either way. We'd made our case, but so had they. What happens if we lose? I asked. We appeal. But Naomi, I don't think we're going to lose. You don't know that. No. But I believe in our case. I spent 2 weeks in limbo, grieving my mother, waiting for a decision that would determine my future, wondering if any of this had been worth it. The anonymous emailer sent one final message. Regardless of the ruling, you've already won. You survived them. That matters more than money. I didn't respond, but I thought about it constantly. Had I won anything? Or had I just traded one kind of pain for another? The call came on a Thursday morning. Judge Morrison has issued her ruling, Catherine said. We need to be in court in 2 hours. This was it. The end of months of hell. The final answer. I dressed carefully, drove to the courthouse, and walked into that courtroom one last time. Judge Morrison entered, her face unreadable. I've carefully reviewed all testimony and evidence in this matter, she began. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her. This is my ruling. The will of Richard Ellington is valid and will be executed as written. The courtroom erupted. Vanessa screamed something I couldn't make out. Thomas dropped his head into his hands. David just stared straight ahead. Judge Morrison continued over the noise. The evidence clearly demonstrates that Richard Ellington was of sound mind when he revised his will. 3 psychiatric evaluations confirm his mental competency. His reasoning, as documented in letters and video testimony, was clear and rational. He was disappointed in his children's behavior and character, and he chose to leave the trust to someone he believed better embodied his family's values. Patricia was on her feet. Your Honor, the forged documents were indeed forged, and I've referred that matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. However, they were forged by someone attempting to discredit Ms. Clark, not by Ms. Clark herself. The handwriting analysis conclusively proves she never signed those documents. Catherine squeezed my hand under the table. As for the allegations of undue influence, Judge Morrison continued, there is zero evidence of contact between Ms. Clark and Mr. Ellington after her divorce. Security records, phone logs, and witness testimony all support her account. The claim that she manipulated him is based entirely on speculation and desperation. Vanessa stood up. This is a travesty. Mrs. Bradford, sit down. Judge Morrison's voice was steel. I'm not finished. Vanessa sat, shaking with rage. Furthermore, the evidence of embezzlement by Mrs. Bradford and Thomas Ellington is deeply troubling. While not directly relevant to the validity of the will, it certainly illuminates character and motive. The Ellington children have stolen nearly $47 million from their father's company while accusing Ms. Clark of theft. The hypocrisy is staggering. Judge Morrison looked directly at me. Ms. Clark, you are the rightful owner of the Ellington Family Trust and all associated assets. The trust documents are valid, your ownership is absolute, and this matter is resolved. She slammed her gavel. We're adjourned. I couldn't move. Catherine was hugging me, saying something about victory, but I felt numb. I'd won. After months of hell, public humiliation, my mother's death, countless attacks on my character, I'd won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Catherine guided me through them without stopping for questions. I caught a glimpse of Vanessa surrounded by her own crowd of reporters, her face twisted with fury as she declared she'd appeal. She'd fight this forever. Justice hadn't been served. David stood apart from his siblings, looking lost. Our eyes met for a second, and I saw something there, regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. Then someone pulled me toward the car and he was gone. Catherine took me to her office to sign papers. Official transfer of the trust. Account access. Investment management. A blur of legal language that meant I now controlled $482 million. Congratulations, she said when we finished. You did it. I don't feel like I did anything. I just survived what they did to me. That's often what winning looks like. Especially for people like us. She didn't elaborate on what people like us meant, but I understood. Women. Black women. People who had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. What happens now? The Ellingtons will likely appeal, but they won't win. Judge Morrison's ruling is solid. Meanwhile, you can access the trust funds immediately. Start planning what you want to do with them. What did I want to do? I'd been so focused on surviving the fight that I hadn't thought much about what came after. I need time, I said, to grieve my mother, to figure out who I am now. Take all the time you need. The money isn't going anywhere. I went home to my small apartment, the same place I'd lived through the whole ordeal. Now I could afford anything, go anywhere, but I just wanted to be still. My father called that evening. I saw the news. You won. Yeah, your mother would be proud. Would she? Or would she think the cost was too high? I miss her, Dad. I know, baby. Me too. He was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Figure it out, I guess. That money's not going to make you happy, you know. It might make life easier, but happiness, that's something different. I know. We talked for a while longer about nothing important. Just the sound of his voice was comforting. Over the next few days, messages poured in. Congratulations from people I'd never met. Investment advisors offering services. Charities requesting donations. People from my past suddenly wanting to reconnect. One message stood out. From my former business partner, Claire, I know we lost touch, but I always believed in you. If you're thinking about starting another venture, I'd love to talk. I almost deleted it. Another person wanting access to my money. But then I remembered the platform I'd tried to build years ago. The dream of connecting small businesses with resources and opportunities. The vision I'd had before the Ellingtons consumed my life. I called Claire. Naomi. Oh my God, congratulations. The trial must have been hell. It was. But it's over now. So what's next for you? Actually, I wanted to talk about that. Remember our platform idea? Connecting small businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, with suppliers and capital. Of course. That was a great concept. The timing just wasn't right. Maybe it is now. I have resources I didn't have before. And I have something to prove. We met for coffee the next day. Claire brought updated market research, potential tech solutions, scaling strategies. She'd clearly been thinking about this too. The need is even bigger now, she explained. Small businesses are struggling. Access to capital is still incredibly difficult for minority entrepreneurs. A platform that could connect them with vetted suppliers, provide financial education, maybe even facilitate microloans, it could be transformative. How much would it take to build something real? Not a bootstrap operation, but something that could actually scale. Claire pulled out a proposal. Done right? $10 million for initial development, infrastructure, and first-year operations. Another $20 million for scaling. But that would create something sustainable. $30 million. A fraction of what I now controlled. Money that could actually help people like I used to be. Let's do it, I said. Claire's eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously. But with conditions. I'm not just funding it, I'm building it with you. Equal partners. And we hire from communities that need the jobs. And we prioritize businesses owned by women, people of color, immigrants. People who get overlooked by traditional financing. Naomi, that's amazing. But are you sure? This is a huge commitment. I'm sure. My mother told me to build something beautiful with this money. This is what she meant. We shook hands, and for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. But the Ellingtons weren't done with me yet. 3 days after the ruling, I received a letter from David. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. Naomi, I know I don't deserve your attention, but I need to say some things. The trial showed me things about my family I didn't want to see. Vanessa's cruelty. Thomas's weakness. My own cowardice. Dad was right about all of us. I've been thinking about our marriage a lot. About how I let you down. How I chose comfort over courage, like Dad said. I told myself I was keeping peace, but really I was just avoiding conflict. And I lost you because of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you deserved better than how we treated you. How I treated you. And whatever you build with that money will be better than anything we would have done with it. I'm sorry. For everything. David. I read it 3 times, looking for manipulation or ulterior motive, but it just seemed sad. An apology years too late. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Vanessa, meanwhile, was on a media campaign. Every outlet that would listen heard about how I'd stolen her family's legacy, manipulated a sick old man, destroyed her father's memory. She's trying to destroy our family business, Vanessa told a sympathetic reporter. My father built Ellington Manufacturing from nothing, and now this woman who is barely part of our family for 5 minutes controls more wealth than the company is worth. It's disgraceful. Catherine advised, ignoring it. She's bitter. Let her be bitter. You won. But it bothered me. Not because I cared what Vanessa thought, but because she was poisoning the narrative, making me the villain in her story. Then I got an unexpected call. From Thomas. Naomi, I know you have no reason to talk to me, but I need 5 minutes. Please. I almost hung up. But curiosity won. Talk. I'm calling to apologize. For the things I said at trial. The insinuation about you and Dad. It was disgusting and untrue, and I'm ashamed I said it. Patricia told you to say it. She suggested it. I chose to say it. That's on me. He sighed. Dad was right about me. I am weak. I go along with whatever's easiest, and I don't stand up for what's right. I did that with Vanessa's treatment of you during your marriage. I did it with the embezzlement. I did it with this trial. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm trying to be better. I'm cooperating with the investigation into the embezzlement. I'm testifying against Vanessa. And I'm withdrawing from the appeal she's planning. That surprised me. Vanessa must be furious. Vanessa can be furious. I'm done letting her run my life. He paused. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I wanted you to know that some of us understand Dad was right about you. He hung up before I could respond. 2 days later, news broke that Thomas Ellington was cooperating with prosecutors investigating embezzlement at Ellington Manufacturing Corporation. Vanessa was named as the primary suspect. The company's stock dropped 15% in a day. Vanessa released a statement blaming me for manufacturing the scandal to distract from my theft of the family trust. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, emails, witness testimony from company employees. The district attorney was building a case that would likely result in criminal charges. Bradford filed for divorce, distancing himself from his wife's legal troubles. Vanessa was suddenly alone in her fight. David stayed quiet through all of it. No statements, no interviews, no contact. I focused on building the platform with Claire. We hired developers, designers, business strategists. Found office space. Started reaching out to small business organizations. What are we calling this? Claire asked during one planning session. I thought about my mother's final words. About building something beautiful. About surviving the Ellingtons and coming out the other side intact. Clark Collective, I said. Named after my mother. She was a Clark before she married my father, and she taught me that your name is what you make it, not what others give you. Claire smiled. Perfect. We launched the initiative 6 months after the trial ended. A platform connecting minority-owned small businesses with suppliers, resources, and capital. Funded by the Ellington Family Trust, which I officially renamed the Edmund and Margaret Clark Foundation after my parents. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Money that came from the Ellington fortune was now being used to help people the Ellingtons would have overlooked or dismissed. The launch got media coverage, not as much as the trial, but enough. Stories about the ex-wife who'd won a fortune and was using it to help others. About second chances and redemption. Vanessa gave one final interview, calling it a publicity stunt by a woman desperately trying to seem noble while living off my father's money. But even her supporters were losing interest, especially after she was formally indicted for embezzlement and fraud. I watched her perp walk on the news, photographers capturing every second. Part of me felt vindicated. Mostly I just felt tired. She brought this on herself, Catherine said when I called. She stole millions, then had the audacity to accuse you of being a thief. Justice works slowly, but it works. It doesn't feel like justice. It feels like everyone lost something. That's because everyone did. But you lost the least. You still have your integrity. Maybe. But I'd also lost my mother, my privacy, my peace of mind, and years of my life to this battle. The one-year anniversary of the trial ruling came and went. Clark Collective was helping hundreds of small businesses. The foundation was funding education initiatives, healthcare programs, community development projects. I was doing exactly what I'd told Judge Morrison I'd do, building something that mattered. But I was also lonely, isolated by wealth and notoriety. People approached me differently now, always wanting something, always calculating what they could get. Then I met Dr. Marcus Bennett at a foundation event. He ran a community health clinic in North Philadelphia, and he was pitching for funding with no idea who I was. We serve mostly uninsured and underinsured patients, he explained. Standard funding sources won't touch us because our patient population is considered high risk. But these are people who fall through every other safety net. They need us. What would you do with additional funding? Expand hours. Hire more staff. Maybe open a second location. There's so much need. I funded his clinic. Then had coffee with him to discuss the implementation. Then dinner. Then more dinners. You're Naomi Clark, he said after our third dinner. The woman from that trial. I should have recognized you. Most people do immediately. I'm not most people. And I don't care about that trial or that money. I care about whether you're going to let me take you to a real restaurant instead of these casual coffee shops. I laughed for the first time in months. You think you can afford a real restaurant on a clinic director's salary? I can afford to treat you like a woman worth knowing instead of a bank account worth accessing. We dated slowly, carefully. He met my father, who approved. He looks at you like you matter, not like you're a prize to win. 6 months later, Marcus proposed. Not with a huge diamond or a public spectacle, just a quiet question on his apartment balcony. I love you for who you are, not what you have. Will you marry me? I said yes. The wedding was small. My father, a few close friends, Claire, and the Clark Collective team. Marcus's family. No media, no spectacle, no Ellingtons. David sent a card with a simple message: congratulations. You deserve happiness. Vanessa was in prison by then, serving a 5-year sentence for embezzlement and fraud. Thomas had testified against her, accepted a plea deal, and was rebuilding his life quietly. David ran Ellington Manufacturing, trying to repair the damage his siblings had done. I didn't think about them much anymore. They were part of my past, not my future. The anonymous emailer sent one final message on my wedding day. You survived. You thrived. You won in every way that matters. Congratulations. I never found out who'd been sending those messages. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was standing next to Marcus, building Clark Collective, using the Ellington fortune to help people who needed it. What mattered was proving Richard Ellington right, not by being perfect, but by being worthy of the trust he'd placed in me. What mattered was surviving the people who'd tried to break me and coming out the other side, still myself. That night, at our small reception, my father raised a glass. To my daughter, who lost everything and found herself anyway. Your mother would be so proud. I touched the small pendant I wore with my mother's picture. I hope so, Dad. Marcus squeezed my hand. She would be. I didn't know her, but I know you. And you're extraordinary. Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd just been tested and refused to fail. Either way, I was finally free. 2 years after the wedding, Clark Collective had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped over 3,000 small businesses access capital and resources. The foundation had funded 12 community clinics, 6 education centers, and countless scholarships. I was finally living the life Richard Ellington had bet on when he left me that trust. Then I got a call from Mr. Patterson, the lawyer who'd read Richard's will. Miss Clark, or should I say Mrs. Bennett now? I have something for you. Richard left specific instructions that you were to receive this on the 2nd anniversary of the trial ruling. Another letter? A package. Can you come to my office? I went that afternoon, curious and slightly anxious. What else could Richard possibly have left me? Mr. Patterson handed me a sealed envelope and a small wooden box. He recorded a video message as well. He was very specific about the timing. I opened the envelope first. Richard's handwriting, neat and precise. Naomi, if you're reading this, 2 years have passed since the will was executed. 2 years since I tested my children one final time, and they failed spectacularly. I hope you've put the trust to good use. I hope you've proven me right. But there's something else you should know. Something I couldn't reveal during the trial without compromising everything. The embezzlement evidence your lawyer presented? I provided it. I'd known about Vanessa's theft for 3 years. I documented everything, copied every file, traced every transaction. And I left those documents where they'd eventually find their way to you. I wanted you to have the truth about who the real thieves were. Not because I expected you to use it, though I'm glad you did, but because I wanted you to understand the full scope of what you were fighting. My children weren't just entitled and cruel. They were criminals. And they had the audacity to accuse you of manipulation while stealing from the company I built. The box contains something else, proof that Vanessa forged those visitor logs and the consulting contract. Security footage, communications with the forger, payment records. Everything you'd need to have her charged with additional crimes. I leave it to your discretion whether to use this information. Vanessa is likely already facing consequences by now. But I wanted you to have the power to decide her fate, just as she tried to decide yours. You've proven yourself worthy of the trust, Naomi. Now prove yourself worthy of mercy or justice. Whichever you choose. Richard. I stared at the letter, processing. Richard had orchestrated even more than I'd realized. He'd given me the evidence to destroy Vanessa completely, but only after I'd already won. After I'd proven I could win without it. It was one final test. What would I do with power over someone who'd tried to destroy me? I opened the wooden box. Inside were USB drives, documents, and a note. The choice is yours. Mr. Patterson queued up the video. Richard appeared on screen, looking exactly as I remembered him. Severe, calculating, but with something almost like warmth in his eyes. Naomi, by now you've read my letter and seen the evidence. You're wondering why I'm giving you this choice instead of simply ensuring Vanessa faced full consequences for her actions. The answer is simple. I'm still testing you. Not to determine if you deserve the trust, you've already proven that. But to see what kind of person you'll become with power. Power reveals character. Vanessa got power and became cruel. Thomas got power and became passive. David got power and became weak. They all failed the fundamental test of what you do when you have the ability to hurt people who've hurt you. You have that ability now. You can ensure Vanessa spends additional years in prison. You can publicly humiliate her beyond what's already happened. You can make certain she never recovers from her fall. Or you can choose mercy. Not because she deserves it, she doesn't. But because you're better than she is. I'm not telling you which choice to make. I'm simply giving you the information and trusting you to decide wisely. Whatever you choose, know this: you were the daughter I wish I'd had. Watching you survive my family's cruelty with your dignity intact was the proudest I've been of anyone in decades. The trust is yours because you earned it. This choice is yours because I trust you. Build something beautiful, Naomi. You already have. Keep going. Richard. The video ended. I sat in silence, holding the USB drives that contained Vanessa's fate. Mr. Patterson spoke quietly. He spent his last months planning this. Every detail, every revelation, every test. He wanted to ensure you had not just money, but power. The power to shape your own narrative. What would you do? I asked. With this evidence? That's not for me to say. But I will tell you this. Richard believed you'd make the right choice. Whatever that choice is. I took the box home. Showed Marcus everything. This is a lot, he said, reading Richard's letter. He's asking you to decide someone's future. Vanessa tried to destroy me. She forged evidence, leaked my therapy records, contributed to my mother's stress during her final months. She called me a gold digger and worse for years. She deserves to face consequences. Sounds like she already is. She's in prison. Her reputation is ruined. Her marriage ended. Her family won't speak to her. But not for everything she did. Not for the forgeries. Does adding more punishment make you feel better? Or does it just mean you're still letting her control your emotional energy? I thought about that for a long time. The next day, I called Catherine. I have new evidence about the forged documents. Proof that Vanessa orchestrated everything. That's huge. We could file additional charges, extend her sentence significantly. I know, but I'm not going to. Catherine was quiet for a moment. You're sure? I'm sure. Vanessa's already in prison. Her life is already destroyed. Adding more punishment doesn't heal anything. It doesn't bring my mother back. It doesn't erase what she did. It just keeps me connected to her, keeps me focused on her, when I want to be focused on building something good. That's remarkably mature. Or maybe I'm just tired of fighting. Either way, I'm choosing to let it go. What about the evidence? What do you want to do with it? Keep it secure. If she ever tries to come after me again, if she ever claims she was innocent or wrongly accused, then we use it. But until then, it stays locked away. Richard would be proud. I hope so. I put the USB drives in a safety deposit box and tried to move forward. But the universe had one more surprise. 3 months later, I received a visitor at the Clark Collective offices. The receptionist called up, sounding uncertain. There's a Vanessa Bradford here to see you. She says it's important. My first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity won again. Send her up. Vanessa walked into my office looking nothing like the polished, cruel woman from the trial. Prison had aged her. No designer suit, no perfect hair, just a tired woman in plain clothes. I'm out on early release, she said without preamble. Good behavior, overcrowding, whatever. I'm out. Congratulations. I'm not here for your sarcasm. I'm here because my lawyer says there's additional evidence against me. Evidence that wasn't used at trial. And I think you have it. I kept my face neutral. What makes you think that? Because you're the only person who'd have access and choose not to use it. Thomas would have destroyed me with it. David wouldn't have had the guts to get it. But you? You're playing some long game I don't understand. There's no game, Vanessa. Then why didn't you bury me completely? You had every reason to. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. You want the truth? I didn't use it because I'm done letting you take up space in my life. Using that evidence would mean more trials, more depositions, more time thinking about you. And I have better things to do. So it exists. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She looked around my office, taking in the photos of small businesses we'd helped, the community projects we'd funded. You did all this with my father's money. With the money he left me, yes. It should have been mine. I worked my whole life for that company, for that legacy. And you embezzled millions from it. You stole from your own father while calling me a thief. You forged evidence and leaked my medical records and made my mother's final months hell. So forgive me if I don't sympathize with your sense of entitlement. Vanessa flinched. For a moment, she looked almost human. Almost regretful. I was angry, she said quietly. My whole life, I tried to be perfect. Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect marriage. I took over when Dad couldn't run things. I made the hard decisions. I sacrificed. And he still loved David more. Still chose his weak, spineless favorite son over me. So you stole from the company. I took what I'd earned. What Dad wouldn't give me. That's not how it works, Vanessa. You don't get to steal and call it justice. She looked at me with something that might have been respect. You really believe that, don't you? You actually think you're better than us. I don't think I'm better than anyone. But I know I'm not worse. And I know that the money I control is being used to help people, not to feed my ego or punish my enemies. Even enemies who tried to destroy you? Especially them. Because that's the difference between you and me. You got power and used it to hurt people. I got power and I'm using it to help them. Vanessa stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, Dad was right about you. You're stronger than any of us. I just wish I'd seen it before I destroyed everything trying to prove otherwise. Vanessa, wait. She stopped. I hope you figure out who you are without the Ellington name, and the money and the power. I hope you find something worth building. Because holding on to anger and entitlement only destroys you. I learned that the hard way. Are you seriously giving me life advice right now? I'm giving you the same grace I wish you'd given me. Take it or don't. That's up to you. She left without another word. Marcus came home that night to find me staring out the window. Vanessa came to see me today, I said. How did that go? Better than expected. I think she's starting to understand what she lost. Not the money, the person she could have been. Do you feel sorry for her? A little. Mostly I feel sorry for all of us. Richard created this test, and it broke his family apart. Vanessa became a criminal. Thomas betrayed his sister. David lost everything he thought he wanted. And I got caught in the middle of their family dysfunction. But you survived it. I survived it. But sometimes I wonder what it cost me. The person I was before I met David, before I married into that family, I can't even remember her anymore. Marcus pulled me close. You're still you. Maybe a little harder, a little more cautious, but still the woman who wanted to help people. That didn't change. It feels like everything changed. Everything did change. But you're still using your power for good. That's what matters. The next day, I made a decision. I called a press conference. Not through the foundation, not through Clark Collective, just me. Reporters filled the room, expecting some announcement about new initiatives or programs. Instead, I told them the truth. 2 years ago, I won a legal battle that made headlines. I was painted as a gold digger, a manipulator, someone who'd stolen a fortune from a grieving family. Today, I want to set the record straight. Richard Ellington left me his family trust not because I manipulated him, but because he tested his children and they failed. They failed by being cruel, passive, and dishonest. They failed by embezzling from his company while accusing me of theft. They failed by prioritizing money over character. I didn't ask for that trust. I didn't expect it. I was just trying to survive a family that never accepted me. But Richard saw something in me that he didn't see in his own children. He saw someone who could take power and use it wisely. Someone who could face cruelty and remain kind. Someone who could survive hell and still build heaven on the other side. I hope I've proven him right. Clark Collective has helped thousands of people. The foundation has funded programs that change lives. And I've tried every day to use this money the way Edmund Ellington intended when he created that trust, to reward integrity, not entitlement. The Ellington family hurt me. They tried to destroy me. But I'm standing here today not because I defeated them, but because I refuse to become them. That's the real victory. Not the money, not the trial ruling, but remaining myself through it all. I'm done talking about the past. I'm focused on the future. On building, not destroying. On helping, not hurting. On proving every single day that Richard Ellington made the right choice. Thank you. The questions came fast, but I'd said what I needed to say. I left the press conference and went back to work. The response was overwhelming. Support, criticism, everything in between. But for the first time, I'd controlled my own narrative. I'd told my story my way. That evening, I got an email from David. I watched your press conference. You're right about everything. Dad tested us and we failed. I failed you, failed him, failed myself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to run the company with integrity, to treat people with respect, to make decisions based on character instead of comfort. I'm trying to be the son Dad wanted instead of the son I was. I know it's too late for us. But maybe it's not too late for me to become someone worthy of the Ellington name. Thank you for showing me what that looks like. David. I didn't respond, but I hoped he meant it. 3 years after the trial, Clark Collective was operating in 8 cities. The foundation had given away over $200 million. My life had found its rhythm. And then I got one final piece of mail. A letter from Vanessa, postmarked from California. Naomi, I'm writing this from a place I never thought I'd be, rock bottom. I lost everything. My freedom, my family, my identity. Everything I thought made me valuable is gone. And in losing it, I finally understand what Dad saw in you. You had nothing and you were still someone. I had everything and I was nothing without it. I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping women transitioning out of incarceration. It's humbling work. Hard work. Work that doesn't come with prestige or recognition. And it's teaching me what you already knew, that worth isn't measured in dollars or status. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you that you were right. About everything. Thank you for not destroying me when you had the chance. That mercy saved my life, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Vanessa. I showed Marcus the letter. Are you going to respond? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks some bridges are better left burned. What does your gut say? My gut said that Richard's final test wasn't about whether I'd use the evidence against Vanessa. It was about whether I'd allow room for redemption, hers and mine. I wrote back, Vanessa, I'm glad you're finding your way. We all deserve the chance to become better than we were. I hope your work brings you peace. I forgive you. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger was poisoning me. That forgiveness is for me as much as it is for you. Build something good with your second chance. Naomi. I sent it and let go of the last piece of resentment I'd been carrying. That night, Marcus and I sat on our balcony, watching the city lights. Do you ever regret it? He asked. The trial, the fight, everything it cost you? I regret that it happened at all. I regret my mother didn't live to see what I built. I regret the years of my life consumed by other people's dysfunction. But I don't regret who I became because of it. That trial, that family, that whole nightmare, it tested me in ways I never imagined. And I passed. Not perfectly, but honestly. Richard would be proud. I think he would be. I hope my mother is too. Marcus kissed my forehead. She is. I'm sure of it. I looked out at the city and thought about everything that had led me here. The betrayal, the trial, the victory, the choices. Richard Ellington had given me more than money. He'd given me the chance to prove myself, to him, to his family, to the world, and most importantly, to myself. And I'd done exactly that. 5 years after the trial, I stood in front of a crowd of 500 people at the Clark Collective Annual Gala. Entrepreneurs we'd helped, community leaders, foundation partners, and people whose lives had been changed by the work we'd built together. Marcus stood beside me, our 2-year-old daughter on his hip. Margaret Clark Bennett, named after my mother. She had my eyes and Marcus's smile, and she was completely oblivious to the fact that this entire organization existed because her mother had survived hell and decided to build heaven instead. 5 years ago, I was handed a fortune I never asked for and a legacy I didn't understand. I was told I'd inherited this money because I'd proven myself worthy through surviving cruelty with dignity, through persevering when quitting would have been easier, through maintaining my integrity when compromising it would have been more profitable. The room was silent, attentive. I didn't feel worthy then. I felt broken. I'd lost my mother. I'd been publicly humiliated. I'd had every private pain exposed for entertainment. I'd been called a gold digger, a manipulator, a thief. And part of me believed those accusations, because when you hear lies enough times, they start to sound like truth. Margaret squirmed, and Marcus bounced her gently. But someone believed in me before I believed in myself. Richard Ellington saw potential I couldn't see. He created a test I didn't know I was taking, and when I passed, he gave me not just money, but purpose. I gestured to the screens around the room showing Clark Collective's impact. Businesses launched, jobs created, families lifted out of poverty. This is what that money became. Not a prize I won, but a responsibility I accepted. Every dollar Richard Ellington left me has been multiplied into opportunity for people who remind me of who I used to be. People with dreams, but no connections. People with talent, but no capital. People who work 3 jobs and still can't get ahead. The crowd applauded, but I held up my hand. I don't tell you this for applause. I tell you this because I want you to understand something. Winning isn't about defeating your enemies. It's about becoming the person they couldn't break. The Ellington family tried to destroy me, and in failing, they proved Richard right. I was stronger than any of them. More applause, louder this time. But strength isn't just surviving cruelty. It's what you do after. It's whether you become bitter or better. Whether you hoard your power or share it. Whether you punish those who hurt you or build something so beautiful that their hatred becomes irrelevant. I looked at Marcus, at our daughter. I chose to build. And in building, I found something more valuable than any trust fund. I found myself again. I wrapped up my speech with the numbers. Clark Collective had helped over 8,000 businesses in 12 cities. The foundation had distributed $387 million to education, healthcare, and community development programs. We created an estimated 15,000 jobs and impacted over 200,000 lives directly. Richard Ellington bet $482 million that I'd do something meaningful with his family's wealth. I hope wherever he is, he knows he bet on the right person. The gala raised another $12 million that night. Donations from people who believed in what we were building. Afterward, as I was saying goodbye to guests, I noticed someone standing alone near the back. David. He'd aged in 5 years. Gray at his temples, lines around his eyes. He looked smaller somehow, less certain. I walked over. I didn't know you were here. I bought a table. Anonymous donation. I wanted to see what you'd built. He looked around the room. It's impressive, Naomi. Really impressive. Thank you. I've been following Clark Collective. The business model is brilliant. You're doing exactly what you tried to do with your first startup, but with actual resources to scale. That was the plan. Dad would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Not that my pride matters. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. How's the company? I asked, more out of politeness than curiosity. Recovering. We implemented new oversight procedures, ethics training, transparency measures. It took 3 years to rebuild trust with investors and partners, but we're stable now. Not growing like before, but stable. That's good. Thomas is working there again, actually. Mid-level position, nothing fancy. He's rebuilding his reputation slowly. And Vanessa? He trailed off. I know about Vanessa. She wrote to me. David looked surprised. She did. A couple years ago. She's doing good work, from what I hear. She is. It's strange, seeing her humble. But maybe it's what she needed. He shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize again. I know I've said it before, but watching you tonight, seeing what you've accomplished, it drives home how badly I failed you. David, we've been through this. No, let me finish. I failed you as a husband. I failed to defend you, to stand up for you, to be the partner you deserved. And then I failed you again during the trial, letting Vanessa and Thomas drag you through hell because I was too weak to stop them. I chose my family's approval over doing what was right. You did, I agreed. But that's in the past now. Is it? Because I look at you with your husband and your daughter and this incredible organization, and I realize I lost something irreplaceable. Not the money, I don't care about that. But I lost you. The best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too cowardly to fight for it. David, I'm not going to absolve you or tell you it's okay. What you did hurt me deeply. But I've moved on. I'm happy now. And I hope eventually you'll be happy too. I'm working on it. Therapy mostly. Trying to understand why I am the way I am. He smiled sadly. Turns out when your dad's entire legacy is about testing your character, it does a number on you. We were all performing for him, all trying to prove we were worthy. And we all failed in different ways. He shouldn't have tested you like that. It wasn't fair. Maybe not. But he wasn't wrong about us. We were exactly as flawed as he thought we were. Margaret started crying, and Marcus came over with her. She's tired. We should probably get her home. David looked at our daughter with something like longing. She's beautiful. You're lucky. I am, Marcus agreed, his tone making it clear David's time was up. David took the hint. I'll let you go. Congratulations on everything, Naomi. You deserve all of it. He left, and I watched him disappear into the crowd. You okay? Marcus asked. Yeah, just strange, seeing him. Remembering who I was when I was with him. You're not that person anymore. No, I'm not. We took Margaret home and put her to bed. I stood in her nursery afterward, watching her sleep, thinking about the journey that had led to this moment. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Amazing event tonight. Year 6 is going to be even bigger. I've got plans. Another text from my father. Your mother would have loved seeing this, baby. I'm so proud of you. And one more from an unknown number. You passed every test. Built something beautiful. Proved everyone wrong and yourself right. The story isn't over, but this chapter ended perfectly. A friend. The anonymous emailer one last time. I never did figure out who that was. Maybe Mr. Patterson, maybe someone else Richard had enlisted to watch over me. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd survived the test and built something lasting. The next morning, I had coffee with Claire to plan our 6th year of operations. We've been approached about expanding internationally, she said. Businesses in Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, all wanting the same model we've built here. Access to capital, mentorship, network building. That's ambitious. So was everything else we've done. The question is whether you're ready for it. I thought about Richard's letter. Build something beautiful. Keep going. Let's do it. But carefully. We partner with local organizations. We listen to what communities need instead of assuming we know. We scale with intention. Agreed. This is going to be amazing. We spent 3 hours mapping out expansion plans, infrastructure needs, funding allocation. The work I'd once done alone in my apartment with $15,000 and a dream, now backed by hundreds of millions and a team of talented people who believed in the mission. That afternoon, I visited my mother's grave. I went every month, told her about what we were building, about Margaret, about life. "We're going international, Mama," I said, sitting on the grass beside her headstone. "Clark Collective is going to help people all over the world. People like us. People who need someone to believe in them." The wind rustled through the trees, and I imagined it was her approval. "I miss you every day. I wish you could see Margaret. She's got your stubbornness already, and she's not even 3. Marcus says she's going to run the world someday, and I believe him." I traced her name on the stone. Margaret and Clark. I forgave them, Mama. The Ellingtons. Not because they deserved it, but because you were right, holding on to anger was poisoning me. Vanessa's building something good now. David's trying to be better. Even Thomas is working on himself. And me, I'm just trying to honor what Richard gave me by using it well. I stayed until the sun started setting, then drove home to my family. Marcus was cooking dinner, Margaret helping by making a mess with wooden spoons. "Daddy, Mama home," she shrieked when she saw me. I scooped her up, covering her face with kisses. This was the victory. Not the money, not the trial ruling, not the public vindication. This. Family, purpose, peace. That night, after Margaret was asleep, Marcus and I sat on the couch reviewing the international expansion plans. "This is going to change everything," he said. "Clark Collective going global. That's a whole different level of impact." I know. It's exciting and terrifying. You've got this. You've handled everything else life threw at you. With help. I couldn't have done any of this alone. But you could have. That's what makes you remarkable. You didn't need Richard's money to be exceptional. You were already exceptional. The money just gave you the platform to prove it. I kissed him. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "You weren't lucky. You were worthy. There's a difference." The next week, I received an invitation to speak at a business conference. The topic, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, Building an Empire After Loss. I almost declined. I'd spent 5 years trying to move past the trial, past the Ellingtons, past that entire chapter of my life. But then I thought about all the people who'd reached out over the years. People going through divorces, family conflicts, public humiliation. People who needed to know that survival was possible, that rebuilding was possible, that you could lose everything and still create something meaningful. I accepted the invitation. The conference was in Chicago, in front of 2,000 entrepreneurs and business leaders. I told my story honestly. The marriage, the racism, the divorce, the trial. The forgeries, the leaked records, my mother's death. All of it. "I share this not for sympathy," I said, "but to show you that the worst moments of your life don't have to define you. They can refine you instead." The Ellington family tried to break me, and in the process, they forged me into someone stronger than I'd ever been. I talked about Clark Collective, about choosing to build instead of destroy, about using power to lift others instead of crushing enemies. Richard Ellington gave me a gift, but not the one people think. The gift wasn't the money. It was the challenge. He challenged me to prove I was worthy, and in proving it to him, I proved it to myself. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached me. Women who'd survived similar situations. Entrepreneurs who'd been written off. People who'd lost everything and were trying to rebuild. One woman, probably in her 60s, took my hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. My daughter-in-law is going through something similar, family that won't accept her, a weak husband who won't defend her. I'm going to tell her your story. I'm going to tell her that survival is possible." It is, I assured her. It's hard and it's painful, but it's possible. Tell her to hold on to herself. That's the most important thing. The speaking engagement led to others. I became something I never expected, a voice for people who'd been underestimated, dismissed, betrayed. A year later, I published a book, Worthy: Building a Legacy After Betrayal. It told my story in full, including details I'd never shared publicly. My literary agent said it was therapeutic reading for anyone who'd survived family dysfunction or public humiliation. The book became a bestseller. Not because of the money or the dramatic trial, but because the themes were universal. Betrayal, survival, redemption, rebuilding. Vanessa sent me a copy to sign. Her note was simple. This book helped me understand what I put you through. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm saying it anyway. Thank you for telling the truth, even when it included grace for people like me. I signed it. To Vanessa, may we both keep building something better than we were. Naomi. David never contacted me about the book, but Thomas did. I read it twice. Once for the story, once to really understand what we did to you. I'm sorry, Naomi. For all of it. The book tour took me across the country. At every stop, I told the same message. Your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. The Ellingtons couldn't see my value, so Richard gave them a test. They failed because they'd already decided I was worthless. But I passed because I knew my worth had nothing to do with their approval. Clark Collective's international expansion launched successfully. We partnered with organizations in 6 countries, adapting our model to local contexts while maintaining our core mission, connecting people with resources and opportunities. The foundation passed $500 million in total giving. We'd funded hospitals, schools, business incubators, job training programs, and community centers. Every dollar multiplied into impact. On the 7th anniversary of the trial ruling, I sat down to write a letter to Richard Ellington. I'd never done it before, seemed pointless to write to a dead man. But I felt like I owed him final words. Richard, 7 years ago, you handed me a fortune and a challenge. You bet that I'd use your family's wealth better than your family would. You tested your children one final time and chose the outsider who'd survived their cruelty over the entitled heirs who'd caused it. I want you to know you were right. Not because I'm perfect, I'm not. But because I understood something your children didn't. Wealth is responsibility, not reward. Power is opportunity to serve, not permission to dominate. Clark Collective has helped tens of thousands of people. The foundation has changed hundreds of thousands of lives. Your family's money is being used to lift people up instead of keeping them down. Vanessa is rebuilding herself through service. Thomas is working honestly. David is trying to lead with integrity. Even they benefited from your final lesson, though it took them years to understand it. I forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because I did. I deserved to be free from anger. I deserved peace. I named my daughter after my mother. She'll grow up knowing that her family's wealth came from surviving a test, from proving worthy, from building something beautiful after everything fell apart. Thank you for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. Thank you for the challenge. Thank you for trusting me with your legacy. I hope I've made you proud. Naomi. I sealed the letter in an envelope and put it in the wooden box with the evidence I'd never used against Vanessa. Artifacts of a battle I'd won by refusing to fight the way my enemies expected. That evening, our whole family gathered for dinner. My father, who'd moved to Philadelphia to be closer to us. Marcus's parents. Claire and her family. The people who'd stood by me through everything. Margaret, now 7 years old, stood up with a glass of juice. I want to make a toast. Everyone smiled, waiting. To Mama, who's the strongest person I know. And to Grandpa Richard, who I never met but who gave Mama the chance to help lots of people. And to Grandma Margaret, who Mama says is watching from heaven and is proud of us. My eyes filled with tears. How did you know about Richard? Daddy told me the story. About how some people were mean to you, but you were nice anyway. And how you got a lot of money and used it to help people instead of buying a bunch of stuff. And how that's what being worthy means. Marcus grinned. She's been asking questions. I figured she's old enough for the truth. What do you think about the story? I asked Margaret. She thought about it seriously. I think you're like